I've compiled some of the most popular and coolest woodworking tools that you've ever seen into one compilation video. You don't want to miss a single one. If you'd like to check out any of these tools for yourself, I'll link them in the description and the pinned comment to help you find them easier. Let's go. Can you get Woodpecker's precision and accuracy for a fraction of the cost? I think I just found it. Let's go. I may have stumbled across some of the best precision layout and measuring tools on the market for woodworking at a budget. Each one of these are less than $30 a piece. I've got 5 to show you, plus a bonus tool that's also under $30, all made by WEN. WEN products. Who knew? Who saw this coming? I've had the WEN drill press since 2017. I've reviewed several WEN products on this channel, and I've always been a big fan of their quality for the price. And these even surprised me as far as how high quality they are, because I am a Woodpecker's fanboy. I have several of their tools. They are very expensive. These rival the Woodpecker's quality and accuracy. I can't tell the difference, for a much, much cheaper price. First on the list is one of the most used tools in any woodworking shop, and that is a square. And having a very good, accurate square is essential to building good quality products that don't rock and wobble and are square. This is one of the best budget squares I've found for woodworking, layout, things like that. Anodized aluminum. There's a few things I really, really like about this square, and there's a couple of things I wish they would improve in the future, or maybe another version. First, this square is accurate. I put it up against both of my Woodpecker squares the same size, the 1281 and the 1282. Inside and outside, you can see here, they're perfectly square. And the scale is also perfectly accurate all the way down on the inch side, up to the 10.5 inches on the inside of this square. Once it's directly overhead, you can see that these markings are lining up. There's a little bit of a parallax effect just because the aluminum square for Woodpeckers is quite a bit thicker than the WEN square. I also like that they've offset the square in here, or in other words, the base or the shoulder of this square is wider, so it does stick to the edge of whatever you're working with, like on this sheet of plywood here. And there's a 45-degree mark or edge already built in, so you can make 45-degree marks in either direction. This square is also tapered on the backside down so that you don't get that parallax effect. It's much thinner on this side versus the inside shoulder. There is inch markings on the inside and centimeters on the outside. If you're in the metric world, congratulations, you have metrics on one side. I don't use those. I do wish that they sold these in metric and inch, but honestly, I rarely ever use the measurements on a square to set my measurement. I'm typically just using a tape measure, and the square is being used for a square. But speaking of measurements, if you do use those, I do wish they would have printed those on the back side. You can see there's none on the back, and they are on the front side. Not a huge deal, but at this price point, you really can't argue with this because it is an accurate square. So if you just need a really good layout square for checking square of your products or laying things out, this might be the way to go at this price. If you're interested in this square or any other of these amazing tools that you're fixing to see, I'll link them in the description and the pinned comment to help you find them easier. And if I can find them on YouTube Shopping, you'll also see the View Products button on screen where you can shop these products. Now, while these are absolutely fantastic tools, one of the ways they're saving money, which I don't really mind, is their packaging. It's just brown cardboard, just like all WEN tools come in like this. I don't really mind that. They do have all of them. All of these had foam inserts with them that allows you to keep these protected. If you wanted to put them in a drawer or something like that, you could just keep this foam packaging, and then you can keep everything nice and organized should you choose to do that. All right, this set and number 4 is probably my favorite out of the bunch. This is the T-marking squares or T-marking rulers from WEN, and there's also one I'm gonna throw in here is called a shoulder square. These are very well made and extremely useful for layout. So I bought all 3 of these because I wanted to check them all out, and I think it's a good idea just to have all 3 of these in the shop. You get a little 3-inch layout, a little 10-inch, and then the shoulder square, which we'll talk about in a minute. First up, you may notice that this is offset from the ruler itself. The ruler is also tapered on both sides, which I really like. It really takes away any errors that you're going to get from parallax. This one is not in metric in any form. You're getting all the imperial. So if you need metric, sorry. You can see these scribe holes here are all offset from each other, a 32nd of an inch. Like, you're getting some extreme precision here. So on both sides you get 1/16 of an inch markings, but they are labeled at 1/8 inch increments. So you can see the 1 inch line or the 9, then you get 1/8, quarter, 3/8, half, 5/8, 3/4, 7/8, and then the next inch. But in between those there are 1/16 of an inch increments on both sides. However, these holes are actually laid out in 1/32 of an inch. As you see here, when you do your scribe lines, you can see that they are extremely close together. using those scribe holes. Because they are tapered down toward the stock, then you're getting those pinpoint accuracy when you want to lay out your markings. Like if I was going to mark 3 inches here, the line is right on the material, which I really like. The Woodpecker T-marking rule is very similar to that. It's tapered down toward the stock. You know exactly where you're going to be marking without any parallax effect. Like the thicker rulers, you'll see where the marking is like an 1/8 inch above the stock, you may make a mark a little bit off. If you need really, really good accuracy, I like that these are tapered. Now this little 3-inch layout rule is perfect for the shirt pocket, the apron pocket, or wherever you keep your layout tools. It's a really nice little handy thing. And it is actually square. So you can use either one of these as a square to mark square lines, should you need to do that. And they both have that shoulder so it sticks on the edge of your stock. And what matters most if you're buying precision tools is that they are accurate. And you can see I put the Woodpecker's edge rule. I'm using the Woodpeckers because it seems to be like the standard for accuracy when people start comparing tools. But you can see here all the way out to 10 inches, dead accurate. No issues at all. These are some of the best priced layout tools that are this accurate that I've seen on the market, bar none to date. Also, not lost on me, I do really appreciate that they put this little orange stripe down through there. It adds nothing other than a little bit of aesthetics to it, and I like that look. And we'll see some more of this in a minute in some of their other tools, something similar to this. I just like it. It kind of gives them something that stands apart. Other than just being plain black, it gives that little nice streak of color. It's kind of cool. And on the small one, it goes right across the top. It's neat. I like it. Now there's bunches and bunches of times you want to carry a mark around a piece of stock or over the two faces of the stock, and this little shoulder square is perfect for that. You still get that same scale at 1/16 inch increments marked off it. For whatever reason, it's labeled 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, etc. And you also have those scribe holes, same type scribe holes, and the Pentel pencil actually fits really well in there. I've noted this in many videos that this is my favorite pencil for woodworking, but this is what that's for. You can just lay that line out around the edge of a board like that, and these little shoulder squares are perfect for that. Now, you can use other tools to do that, but a lot of times what you find is this shoulder isn't long enough to carry a line with any meaning. And so now that I have that line and the little bit longer line on the face, I can take one of my other layout tools and continue that line on. Seriously impressed with these T-marking rulers and this shoulder square. I think these should be bought as a set. They're not sold as a set, just buy all 3. You're not going to be disappointed with them, and you'll use them all the time. Next up, this is WEN's 6 rulers in 1. This little ruler has some very unique features that I really like. First, I like the color coding on here. You get a yellow stripe, a blue stripe, and a red stripe depending on which side you're looking at, so you can know in a glance what side you're on. Once you learn what scales coordinate to the color, pretty cool. I also like on this end, this says 1/4 inch, and that 0 to there is a 1/4 inch. Same thing here, 0 to there is 1 inch. Flip it around on the other side, you have 1/2, you have an 1/8, and as you rotate them, 3/4 of an inch, 3/32, 3/16. So any of these measurements that you consistently have to lay out over and over, like 3/4 of an inch. We're always using 3/4 or 1 inch or even 1.5 inch like you see on this scale. This is a really good tool that's already marked out on there. You can just lay it down, make the marks, and you can go. Another cool thing is across the top, if we have it in this direction, we have inches. Every time we rotate it, at the top's inches. And then if we flip it over, at the top now is in metric. So if you wanted to use your metric measurements, there you go. So this is work for everybody. This is also triangular in shape, so each side is going down directly onto your stock. So much like these other rulers that we showed that are tapered, this tapers down to your stock, so you're not getting a parallax effect or anything like that. You're marking directly at that number that's touching the stock, and I really do like that. Also, all of these tools are laser etched. Not sure if I mentioned that. So these numbers and things like that are going to last you a long, long time using these tools. You don't have to worry about that. Anodized aluminum, they're really nice feeling quality tools, as nice as the Woodpeckers feels. It just depends on what color you like and where you like them made. And as far as accuracy goes, I'm going to line this up with the Woodpecker's edge rule, and you can see all of the markings are exactly the same. Now, of course, they're flipped over because of the way they're oriented, but you can see the inches line up perfectly with the other inch marks on the Woodpeckers. So if you're looking for something that's accurate, especially if you like to draw your own plans and things like that, this might be the perfect little sketching or drafting ruler for you. It's just a good all-around tool to have in the shop, and you can't have too many rulers, so why not? Especially at this price. Next up is a angle finder. If you've ever run into, what is that angle? How do I figure this out? How do I figure out the angles on the X brace, for instance? If you're doing X braces on end tables, things like that, This is where this really comes in handy, because you can use this to find the angle that you need and then take it over to the miter saw and set your angle correctly, referencing the angle finder on here. This is laid out in 1 degree increments from 0 all the way to 180 degrees. And then also there is a scale here on the ruler end of it, should you need to measure something with that. Not really what this is meant for as far as measuring goes, but as far as finding angles, snug this little center bolt up right there, and then while it moves still, so it's still freely moving, it's not locking it in place or anything. I do kind of wish they had a lock there that locked it in place so you don't bump it, but now we know that this is a 35 degree angle, and now you can go over to your miter saw, set 35 degrees, and you know you're going to get the exact right cut that you need based on this. Very simple tool, but also, again, handy as a shirt pocket. Next up, this is probably my pick as far as best of the best. If you're gonna buy one thing, buy these. And I would buy them as a set if you can fit them in your budget. These are layout rulers, and they're some of the most handy things you can have in the shop. And these have a really nice hook on the end. And if you don't want the hook, you can take them off because it just has an Allen key there that you can just unscrew and take it off. However, having that hook on there allows you to hook it on the end or edge of your stock. So like if you're laying out plywood, you need to cut out different pieces out of this plywood, this is the perfect way to lay those out. You can use your tape measure, of course, and then you can use these as straight edges to mark the straight lines too. But because these scales are so extremely accurate, you're not gonna have to worry about any inaccuracies there. You can use these to lay everything out perfectly. And there are 3 here. I bought a 12 inch, a 24 inch, and a 36 inch, and I find that having those 3 sizes are some of the best in the shop. I would like to see a 48 inch from them, and I would buy that one too, just so it can go all the way across this sheet of plywood. However, having this is nice. On one side of the ruler, we do get inches in 16th inch increments, so we can lay those out. That's pretty much all you need for most woodworking applications, is that 16th inch for layout. On the other side, we do have millimeters, so you can really get down to the millimeter if you want to, and if you're into metric. And I do like that they're offering these in a combo, so it's not really alienating anybody. You don't have to worry about, did I buy the millimeter or the inch? You can just pick this one up. It has both on, basically best for both worlds, so everybody's happy. And all 3 of these, 12, 24, and 36, are also tapered, just like the rest of these rulers, just like the Woodpeckers is doing with their rulers. They have a set of rulers too. This is the T-marking ruler, but they do have a set of rulers just like this you can purchase as well. The only thing really different between the Woodpeckers line and the WEN line is there are scribe holes here in the Woodpeckers line. I don't really think you need that on a ruler like this, because it's not a T-marking ruler like these smaller ones was, like the 10 inch I showed you. It does have those scribe lines. These don't, but they are also just basically for laying out. And they are nice and straight. In other words, perfectly straight. So if you need a straight edge for any reason, you can use that as well. Again, these are anodized aluminum. They do have these little indentions in the middle, depending on which one you get, how many indentions there. Nice little finger hold, just helps you hold it when you pick it up, things like that. And should you decide to take this off and move it to the other end, there are holes there to let you mount that T-hook on the other end. And they do have a hole pre-drilled in them, so if you wanted to hang these up on a nail, on a hook, anything like that, you can store them out of the way so they don't get damaged. Again, I think these are some of the best budget level precision tools that I've seen on the market to date. I actually ordered some Woodpecker dupes off of Amazon before while they were trying to imitate Woodpeckers, and the accuracy just wasn't there on most of those tools. Like, there were several in that video. I'll link in the description if you want to check it out, but there's a bunch of those tools that just weren't very accurate. And you could tell that there was a quality difference there too, like a pretty good quality difference on several of them. Not all, but several. On every single one of these that I bought, all of this with my money, every one of these are high quality, very nice aluminum. They don't feel cheap, and they're very accurate. And you can't ask for much more than that, especially at this price. We're talking under $30 for each piece. Man, I'm telling you, this is game changing for those on a budget who've been wanting some high quality tools, but really can't afford to jump into the Woodpeckers line because these are very expensive. Before we get to the bonus pick, let's talk about where these are made and why that may matter to some people. Well, these are made in the USA and these are made in China. Yeah, they are. However, not everybody can afford at this point to buy made in America tools, because made in America tools cost a lot more because of production costs, labor costs, all that stuff. And then you have those that say, I'll never support anything that's made somewhere else. That's fine as you type away on your foreign made device. With that said, if I can buy and support Woodpeckers, I will, because I like their tools. I think they make great stuff. But I also am not ignorant to the fact that these are still high quality tools at a very affordable price, and a lot of people will buy these and be extremely happy with them, and that's okay too. I feel like some of my duty here on this channel is to help find good quality tools that will help you build the projects you're wanting to build at a good price without breaking the bank. And these are some of those tools I think you'll be satisfied with for years to come. Here's the bonus. This is a setup tool and also corner clamps or positioning squares. If you don't have any of these, especially if you build drawers, boxes, things like that, this is where these things really shine, or even cabinets. Holding them all square while you get your pocket holes drilled or whatever joiner you're using, and if you don't have some way to hold those together, it's a pain in the rear. These are really nice because A, they're square, perfectly square, as you see here with the Woodpecker square, and they're easy to use, and it comes with everything you need in a set. You get 2 squares, you get 4 of those J-hooks with the knobs and the little backing clamps back there, so it distributes the pressure evenly down toward the bottom. And now these 2 pieces aren't perfectly lined up, but that's okay. In other words, the same thickness. Just as an example, this will hold this perfectly square while you lay out your marks or put joinery in or whatever you need to do. And because these are perfectly square and the graduation marks are actually from 0 at the bottom of the square moving up, it's almost deceiving because of that blank space right there on the corner, but it actually is 0 at the corner. So in other words, you can use these to set up blade heights, bit heights, and you can use these as a normal square as you would any other square in the shop, especially if you're just using it to square up the inside corners of things, drawers, boxes, all that good stuff. All around, solid option if you need a set of these. So if you're on a budget and you don't know which one of these to pick, which one would I recommend you buy first, or which ones in what order? First and foremost, I think you should buy the rulers. If you're just gonna buy one, just get the 36-inch ruler. If you have the budget, pick up the 3, 12, 24, 36. Next on the list, I would personally pick up the T-marking rulers. Next is number 2. And number 3, I would pick up the layout square. If you don't have a layout square, this may go number 1 on your list. You let me know in the comments. And then I do like these positioning squares quite a bit, so I'd probably put those next. Followed up by the tri-ruler or drafting ruler, and then finally the compass if you need a way to find angles. If you'd like to check out any of these tools, there'll be links in the description and the pinned comment, as well as if I can find them here on YouTube Shopping, you can click that View Products button. You're gonna be so impressed with these, you don't wanna miss a single one. These are the best table saw upgrades on a budget that you can get on Amazon. Let's go. If you like any of the tools you see today, I'll link them in the description and the pinned comment to help you find them easier. These are awesome. All right, out of the box is pretty impressive what you get here for the price, and that's what this is all about, the budget level stuff. Well packaged, I like that. It's a really nice beefy fence. So far so good. Oh, and this does have that extension on there. I like it so far. Let's hope it's accurate. I was quite impressed coming out of the box. This is a fairly heavy duty miter gauge. In other words, this is extruded aluminum. Very, very straight and accurate right out of the box, as you see here, and very easy to assemble. You literally just loosen 2 bolts off the back of this thing, slide the fence on, tighten that up. You're good to go. You can move that fence wherever you want it along that rail there. It does also include a stop block with micro adjustments. At this price point, this is good to see. I love it. And we also do have the extension wing that we can extend out for more support for longer cuts. It also does come with a variety of wrenches that you can use to adjust this, which you'll probably lose. Just a few Allen keys and this tiny little wrench. Very minimal adjustments are going to be needed here if it's out of the box square, and they do say that right out of the box that it should be ready to go, but there is clear instructions on how you can adjust it should you need it. The actual knob here that you use to attach to your miter gauge, don't forget to put your little plastic washer on there. It feels like a plastic core there, but the outer edges has some type of aluminum grip on there. Not overly grippy, not like a barbell or anything like that, but it does have a little bit of texture there to help you grip it. And it's actually a nice size around to grip, tighten up, loosen, however you need to do that. Now there are positive stops all along where you see those detents. You just pull this little knob up and twist it so that it's sitting on top and not down in that groove. Once you do that and you loosen this knob, you can just slide it along, flip that back down, and it snaps back into place. Pretty cool. And you can leave that raised up to get any angle along the radius, right, that you need, all the way up to 67.5. Looks like all the way to 70 to the left or to the right. So 70 degrees either way. And those positive stops are at common angles, like 15, 22.5, 30, 35, 45, 60, and 67.5. Now you'll notice set screws on the side of this, and that's where you're going to adjust the tension in your miter slot. It will fit 3/4 inch miter slots, as well as like the T miter slots that are 3/4 inch. So I know these type work like on the small 8 1/4 DeWALT job site saw, 10-inch saw, Milwaukee saws, anything like that should have that 3/4 inch groove in it or slot, so this will work. Now I did have to adjust this slightly to fit my miter slot. There was a little bit of slop in there. There are 4 set screws on there that you can adjust. I kept adjusting the one on the back. It felt like it was just a little sloppy for me. And so I just kept on until it gets fairly snug. I want it to be able to slide smooth in the slot, but I also don't want it to have any slack at all. I want it to be snug. That's what you want, so it doesn't move. Now, a couple of things to note. First, cut out of the box on 0, 90 degrees, perfectly square on a common 2x6 that you can pick up anywhere. Tried it on this piece of hardwood here, and it cut perfectly square again. Next, I tried some 45s. On the first 45, I accidentally hit my piece of plywood that's laying on my workbench, so I had to stop and then cut again. But 45 degrees, 45 degrees, it did well. I didn't do anything, I didn't check it. I just used the positive stop at 45, made the cut. Then I made another cut at 45 on the opposite end, cut the piece in two, and let's see if they fit together. You can't get much better than that. Like, it's perfectly 45, perfectly square, 90-degree corner after those two 45s coming together. And a few things I really enjoy about this is the stop block and that micro adjustment. Just like here on that first 45 cut, because I had to stop and start again, you could see where the blade was just a little bit off. So basically use the stop block, use that micro adjust so I could just take off a tiny bit. And the stop block also prevents that board from sliding down as you're making the cut, which is also a good idea. I do like that you can flip this thing up out of the way, so if you don't need the stop block, you can just rock without it. I do like this extension fence. It will extend all the way out to about 38, 37.5 inches away from my blade, or away from the end of the fence, which I have set slightly away from the blade. But that extension fence will let you cut longer stock should you need to. Sometimes you do. Here's the drawback, I think, where we're going to see this at. One thing I've noticed on this miter gauge that you probably won't see on higher end miter gauges, but again, those cost $400, $500, $550 for the saw stop, which is quite amazing. I saw it in person, but it's also $550. This one, the problem I think is going to be on the long extension here. Because we have this long extension and because it's not as high end, I'll say it's more budget friendly, you're going to give up some things on these type of miter gauges, and that's kind of to be expected. If you put pressure on the far side away from the miter slot, you're going to see, or I'd see on this one, a little bit of flex, and that could be a problem if you let the board or whatever stock you're cutting push on the outside. If you're holding everything right here in the center, pushing through the cut, you'll probably be okay. But if you let anything drag out here, or if you're pushing from the outside or anything like that, it's going to cause some inaccuracies just because there's a very, very minor amount of play. Now, I've tried to get this play out with adjusting the set screws to make them very tight, tightening down the knob. Nothing seems to work, tightening every knob and bolt on here that I can. It's just going to have that play simply because of how it's designed, in my opinion. But it's not a deal killer if you know that that's going to happen and you keep all of your pressure right here in the center. It should be okay for most things. Now, the longer pieces, I think you're going to see a little bit of trouble there, but I don't think you're going to see it on shorter pieces, making 90-degree cuts, as long as you can keep everything pressurized right here at the slot. Now, it does have a measurement scale on top that's both in inches and millimeters. Should you be into the metric system, we are not here in the US, and we're okay with that. But it does have both, no matter which system that you run. I think it's a good thing, but I just don't trust it. You would have to basically calibrate it every time to your miter slot or to your blade, or maybe 1 inch away, or however you're going to, ½ inch away, whatever you're going to do away from the blade. Then you would have to calculate that out, or just keep an eye on that. I think it's going to cause more trouble, more confusion than anything. It's just a rough guide. They also give you this little flip indicator that you can use to indicate where it's at on the scale. Should you want to use that, it's there as an option. I'm glad they put it on there as an option. I think the best part about this is this micro adjustment. You can just fine tune this as much as you need. You're just going to loosen off one side, leave this side locked down, and then you can micro adjust that anywhere you want. Like, you can really dial in your cuts if you want to use that stop block there to make precise, accurate cuts. I do love the fact that they put just a regular twist lever so that I could use the extension fence and lock it down. One of my gripes about the Incra 1000 HD, I think is what it was, is it had to use a wrench, basically, or a screwdriver wrench to loosen those off and adjust it. I didn't care for that, but I do like that this is on there so that I don't have to have any special wrenches or anything to adjust that fence. Overall, for the price, And if you don't want to get the one with the extension fence, you can save even more money. I'll link to both in the description. Both of these Vevor brand. I think for the price, this is going to be hard to beat for a budget level miter gauge that's accurate should you use it correctly. No matter what angle you're cutting, if you're trying to do repeatable things, this will help you on your miter saw, especially if you're a beginner or on a budget. And if you're looking for one that's better than the one that comes with almost all table saws, this is a good option for you, in my opinion. It's not perfect, as noted, but I think it's a good option for you if you're needing one. I will quickly mention, if you're needing just a miter gauge, this is probably the best miter gauge on the market, in my opinion, that doesn't have a fence, an extension fence on it. You can put a faux fence on there out of MDF or whatever you want to use. It will be, you can bolt it right to it. And so you can put your own fence on there. But for the price of this is an Incra V27. I think this is what should come with all table saws because it's accurate, because it has a bunch of fine-tuned adjustments on it, and because it's just well made. And it fits, again, in most any T-slot, 3/4 inch miter slot on table saws. This is a good option if you don't need the fence. And this one doesn't flex at all. The next budget table saw upgrade that you should consider from Amazon is the Mousecraft Grabber Pro. Now, it may look similar to one that you may already know. I love the micro jig gripper. I've used one for years. And recently at a trade show, I talked to some Mousecraft guys and they said, hey, have you tried the Grabber Pro? And I said, no. And they said, let us send you one. Check it out, see what you think. Listen, y'all, out of the box, there's no setup to be done. Now, on the gripper, you usually have to assemble it. Not a big deal, but it's just one of the extra steps. This one, all you literally have to do is flip around this little foot that drops down and you're good to go. Now, this one has a few things going for it that the gripper does not. First, I think the pad on the bottom, which a lot of people have told me that the gripper doesn't grip as well as they would like it to on their products. I've never had that issue, but some people do. This is much more grippy. It is noticeably more grippy on the bottom, and two of the legs underneath do adjust side to side where the gripper only does one. What's cool about this, it comes with basically 4 different legs or feet or whatever you want to call them. They call them legs. These long pieces on the bottom. So we have a 1/2 inch and a 1 inch that will move, and then there's a stationary leg on the left side. And you get both a 1/4 inch and they include an 1/8 inch leg that you can easily swap out with 2 screws. Where that's going to shine is if you're cutting very thin strips. And I like the fact that we do have that option there to swap that out, and it's easy. Another thing that's included with this is also this drop down leg on the back, or a pusher block, or whatever you want to call it. I love these at a jointer or even a bandsaw because you'll be able to grab the back of that board and push it through the cut. It can also be useful on the table saw, obviously, but I do like this style. The feet that grip on the bottom or the back. It's very much like older push sticks that you see, like this one, that has the cleat on the back to grab the edge of the board and push it through. Also, the handle is tilted or angled on the micro jig. It's a little bit more ergonomic, honestly, and it is going to help when you're going over the blade. You're usually standing left of the blade anyway, and it's tilted to this way. I do like that. You're also getting a longer footprint here. This is quite a bit longer than the gripper, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's going to give you more control on the piece that you're cutting. So I think they've done a good job here doing something similar to the gripper, but making it a grabber. The gripper, the grabber, whichever one you want to check out. But I will say this one is quite a bit lower in price than the gripper at normal price. So if you want to check out one that you're trying to save money on, which is the purpose of this video, is to show you some budget options to upgrade your table saw to make you safer, this might be a good option for you. I'll link it in the description and pinned comment. There are a few features here that I do like better than the gripper, and I love the gripper. This cleat on the back is probably one of my favorite features, and I even let it kind of sacrificial into the blade on purpose so that I could push that thin strip all the way through. And I like the fact that I can do that. And I'm pretty sure I can order a replacement for that. If I can, I'll pop up yes here on the screen. I'm almost certain you can. And so if you use these for like thin strips a lot, then that might be useful for you. I also like the fact that I can move all of the legs to one side and get them out of the way. So if I am using something like a thin rip jig, then I don't have to worry about it getting caught up. And just the benefits of dropping this leg down on the side to give you more stability depending on the thickness of what material you're cutting, whether that's a 2x, 1x, whatever, it adjusts that, it just gives you a lot of stability. And the handle on here, I do like quite a bit better than the gripper handle. It's just more conformed to the fingers, there's grooves there, it's a little softer, and I like the fact that it's angled. It really does make a big difference because I always stand to the left of the blade, push the cut through. I like that. I think they thought this out When I first saw this, to be perfectly honest, one of the reasons I haven't used one or got one for the channel, I thought, man, this is just a dupe, a knockoff, but it's different. It's similar, but different enough. I think it's justifiable here. What do you think? And speaking of that thin rip jig that I just mentioned, but this is another great budget option to upgrade a table saw. It fits in a standard miter slot. When you tighten that knob down, it locks it into place. There is a wheel right on the front of it that allows you to move the stock over between the fence and this, and it bumps that wheel, lock your fence down. That wheel moves, so you can push your thin cuts through, and you can repeat the process over and over. I've done this a bunch of times using this jig to make things like trim from a router station or a miter station, just little thin strips, just adds a little character to it, and I use this to do it with. I think it's one of the best upgrades you can make, and it's only about $30 or $35 on Amazon, so it's a good little buy. This one's from Peachtree Woodworking on Amazon, so it's a really good top quality brand, well-known brand, and it works well. And it's worked well for a long time. I've had this one for a few years. The next budget upgrade I think you should make is the DFM height gauge. This thing's less than $30, goes in 1/8 inch increments, made out of solid aluminum, and it's durable. I've had this for a couple of years now. It's great because it goes all the way from 1/8 inch all the way to 2 inches, pretty much the most common size you're gonna need to raise your blade up, and you can do it quickly and accurately, which is what I love about this. It's easy to use, very cheap, and very handy. It's even handy as a shirt pocket. This is also a great upgrade for your table saw if you work in a humid environment or damp environments, or your stuff's always rusting, or you don't want it to rust, or maybe you want your wood to slide on your table saw slick as ouse knot. This will do it. This is Bow Shield T9 rust and corrosion prevention for metal, and this is a really good product, and it's less than $30, around $20 actually, and this lasts a very long time. It's in an aerosol can like WD-40 or something similar to that, in that type can, not that type product. Now I've shown this on the channel way back, like 3, 4, 5 years ago now, and this is a very good product. I used it before I started using carbon method, which I love and think it's an amazing product. It's also quite expensive, but I think it's worth it. But if you're looking for a budget option to prevent rust and to make your wood slide on the tabletop real slickety-like, this is a good option for you. T9 Bow Shield, developed by the Bowen Company because they need a special lubricant like this. So they developed this, and now it's on the market. It's been on the market for a while. It even says on the bag that it's made for saw tabletops, and of course a bunch of other stuff you can use it for. But I've used this on the jointer, the planer bed, just to make it more slick, and the table saw. I used it on my Delta table saw for a few years, or a couple years, and it worked well. Prevented the rust, and it kept it slick. You just have to reapply it about once a month or so, but this stuff lasts a long time. If you're in the buy once crowd, get the carbon method. Otherwise, check out this Bow Shield T9. Both are linked in the description of the pinned comment. And as a bonus upgrade that won't break the bank, it's a very good option. Everybody and their mamas told you about these. If you don't have a set yet, get a set of 1, 2, 3 setup blocks. They're very inexpensive, around $20-ish for 2. The reason everybody tells you to get these is because of how precise they are. They're precisely cut 1 inch by 2 inch by 3 inches, hence the name 1, 2, 3. And you can use that to calibrate your saw fence to the blade exactly 1 inch away, or 2, or 3, or stack them together for 4, 5, or 6. So you've got plenty of options there, and you can use it to set up the height of the blade, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up. You don't got a 6 inch high blade, but all the way to 2.5, 3 inches, whatever your saw blade will reach. These are precise, these are well worth the money, and you can use them for a whole bunch of other stuff other than just that. It's just a good option to have in the shop. These are 5 power tools that beginner woodworkers don't need to get started, and I'm gonna show you what to use in their place. This should save you some money, show you some tips and tricks along the way, and help build your woodworking skills. Let's go. Now, when I started out woodworking, I was very broke. I didn't have any money. I had to borrow tools to get started, a circular saw and a couple of drills. I started in a very small shed. I had to figure out ways around not having a miter saw, not having a jointer to edge joint boards, not having proper dust collection, and many other things. Now, I'm gonna show you some tips and tricks I learned to hopefully help you. First up is the miter saw. Now, to be a woodworker, literally all you have to do is cut the wood and put the wood together. That's kind of the simplest form of that. A miter saw does help you do cross cuts, and it does it well. But they are also very expensive depending on the model you're looking at. I have a budget model that I'll link in the description below if you're interested in just going ahead and upgrading, but you don't need a miter saw to get started, and you can cut angles without one, or square cuts. Let me show you. So how do you get away with not having a miter saw? Well, this might be the single most useful tool right behind the tape measure that you can buy, and this is a Swanson Speed Square. I recommend this one because it's very inexpensive, very accurate, and extremely useful. Some say it's handy as a shirt pocket. It just gets hung in there sometimes. It's a really good square. Now check this out. I'm gonna use the very first power tool I started with, and that is this Master Mechanic, no name brand, off-brand, very inexpensive, very borrowed, but I still have, circular saw. Now, this was my dad's. He let me borrow it to get started, and he eventually gave it to me. Now, you can make good, accurate, straight cuts even with less expensive tools like this one. You just need a decent blade. This is a Diablo blade on there. Those are really nice blades for what you use them for, circular saws. Now, what I do to get really square cuts is I just use the Speed Square as a guide from anything on 2x6s or under, 2x4s, things like that. I built a bunch of these outdoor chair sets. J-Bates has free plans for these. You can just search J-Bates outdoor chair set. You'll find these plans for free. And I use this Speed Square to build a bunch of them. All you have to do is use this as a guide to get straight cuts. It's just hold it up against the edge of your lumber and then use that as a guide. Let your circular saw's base ride against the edge of that. You'll get good, accurate, straight cuts every time. It's easy. Some people can freehand straight cuts. If you can, congratulations. But I use this to get good square cuts. Now, what about angles? Because those outdoor chair sets require 10-degree angles, and that's what most people want a miter saw for, is those angles, this will help you get that. Now, is it as easy as a miter saw? No, but you can still accomplish the task. I sold a bunch of these chairs just using this as a 10-degree angle to get those angles on the feet. All you have to do is set it at 10 degrees and make that mark. And then if you want to freehand it, which you see here, I freehanded it, you do a pretty good job. It's pretty close. The problem is if you freehand it and you're off a little bit, when you get your chair fully built, it may wobble a little bit. That is fixable, but it's best if you don't have to deal with it. What I like to do is just hold this on the 10-degree mark and again, use that as an edge guide. You're not pushing too much pressure to the left that it's causing you to move. It's just enough to guide the saw so that it cuts that 10-degree angle that you're needing. You can do that with basically any angle using the Speed Square. That's how you get around that. But what about cutting wider pieces? Say you have a 2x10, 2x12, or even a piece of sheet goods like this piece of MDF that's about 12 inches wide. If you use a square, little Speed Square on that, what winds up happening is after you go past the end, it has a tendency to go to the left a little bit, and then you got a little inaccurate cut there. You don't want that. So you can use a framing square. These also are inexpensive. And then when you add the framing square fence, this is also inexpensive. This gives you a 24-inch wide crosscut guide. And this is a game changer. This thing is fantastic because it's so inexpensive, because it will attach to any framing square. Get a metal one. I like this one. I'll drop a link to all this in the description. When you make that crosscut, this will get you accurate wide crosscuts up to 24 inches wide. And one thing you can do to make it even better is just clamp the end down so that this doesn't move. Because it does have a lot of leverage out here on the end, especially when you get further out there, you want to clamp this down so that it doesn't move. It's very simple to do with a cheap clamp, and then you can cut that. And as you can see here, very, very square cut, just using a circular saw, a framing square, and this handy dandy fence right there. Next up is a jointer. You can edge joint boards without a jointer a couple of ways. I'm going to show you two ways here that I've done it over the years. And we're going to start with the easiest, least expensive, and that's with a 4-foot level. Now it has to be, or it should be, an I-beam style level. In other words, it looks like the letter I if you look at the end of it. And it's metal. It needs to be a metal level from a reputable brand. I like this Stanley, but you use whatever you like. Empire, anything like that, you find at local home stores will work just fine. First thing is first, you got to make sure it's level. Just look down it. If it don't look bowed, you'll probably be all right. Now, next thing you do is take this over to the table saw. If you have a table saw. I know beginners don't need, but if you have a table saw, this is how you can edge joint the board. You take the level, put it against the fence, and then you set the board against the level. Now, you have to make sure that the end of the level and the end of the board are touching so that you can push those through together. They have to move at the exact same time. A lot of people say, what's the difference in just using the level versus using the fence? If you use just the fence against the edge of this board, basically the cut edge will be referencing this side of the board, which could be bowed or have a knot or anything like that in it, and it's going to throw it off. It will throw it off. When you put this against it, the blade has a flat, straight reference on the right side to use to cut a good straight cut. When you do that, you're gonna get a good straight cut on this side of the board. Once you have this side straight, you can literally flip this over and then use this against the fence to rip the other side. Now you've got two parallel sides. Works like a dream. Where this is useful is if you're making panels, AKA tabletops, which is what I used it for a lot. When you do that, it's going to remove that factory edge, which is rounded over, which will give you a nice tight seam there to be able to glue up. This works really good. Is it 100% perfect? Not always. Having a good feather board on there to keep that pressure against the fence or against the level than a fence, it really does help push that horizontal pressure and keeps everything nice and straight. If you have a feather board, there's various ones out there from inexpensive to more expensive. Now the good thing about the level trick is you can use that on job site saws, cabinet saws, it really doesn't matter. I use it for a long time on my Delta saw. Works extremely well. I like the 4-foot style. Now you can only joint about 4.5 to 5 feet long boards with this method simply because of the length of the level. It just doesn't work out better than that. But this will work on a 2-foot level, but the 4-foot just gives you a little more runway. But this is a good solution if you don't have a jointer and you don't want to build a jig, which is what I'm going to show you now. Next up, if you want to joint without a jointer, you can use a jig like this. This is simply a sheet of plywood with some dovetail grooves cut in it using a palm router. This is a very simple jig to use and it works extremely well. Actually better than the level. I like this method a lot better. You just get better results that are repeatable. In other words, it just comes out better every time using the jig. Now jig's very simple to make. I have plans for this on my website, 731woodworks.com. You can go check out. It is a jointing jig. Now it uses dovetail grooves, so if you have a palm router, you can make this really easy. All you're gonna do is take a dovetail bit and route 2 parallel lines down each side of this jig, and then I put some cross lines in there or cross dovetail grooves in there just for extra clamping options. You can put stop blocks in there, anything like that. Once you have the jig built, all you do is put your board on the jig and clamp it down with those dovetail clamps and then run it through the saw. This works extremely well, and it'll work on job site saws, cabinet saws, anything like that, and you have a nice, really nice square edge. This works better than the level, but the level will get you by should you need to not want to build a jig or have the dovetail clamps or anything like that. It's just a less expensive option, but the jig does work better and it's easy to make. And besides, if you have the dovetail clamps and the dovetail bits, you can build all kinds of stuff using that for your shop. I built a portable workbench using it and several other nice little jigs around the shop that use that dovetail groove system. If you find this valuable, hit that subscribe button, click the bell icon so you get notified when I upload the next video. The next thing a beginner absolutely does not need is a track saw, and in some uses that we're going to show you, it can take the place of a table saw if you don't have one of those either. But if you're needing to rip down like plywood, sheet goods, there's a couple of options here. First and foremost, you can just get a straight edge. I got this Swanson straight edge, I think it was 8 foot long, that I used for a very long time, and I could rip full length sheets of plywood with that. Or if you're just doing a lot of cross cutting up to 24 inches, this has been a lifesaver for me, and this is called a KREG rip cut. This KREG rip cut will fit most any circular saw because of the way it's designed here on this shoe that fits the saw. And then you can just use this as an edge guide, similar to how we use the square with the fence for those cross cuts. This kind of works the same way, but this slides along with the saw. This is like a track saw in a way. The only thing you have to watch out for on this is when you get to the end of the cut, similar to using the small speed square at the end where the saw had a tendency to walk, remember? This will do the same thing at the end of the cut just because of the way it's designed. You just have to keep pressure back here on this part as you slide it through the cut and you'll be fine. But you just takes a little practice. Using the long straight edge along with that KREG rip cut, you can pretty much get away with not having a track saw. Now a table saw is just a whole different beast in and of itself because of the ability to rip down small parts and build jigs for it. I recommend a table saw to be able to buy it as soon as you can because it's just a tool that while you can make projects without one, once you get one it does open up a world for you depending on what you're making too. I made those outdoor chairs and benches without ever having a table saw for a very long time, and it's okay. You don't need it to make certain projects, but certain sheet goods and small parts, it works better. And one of the tools that I called a total game changer was the Milescraft track guide. Now this will fit most any circular saw and turn it into a track saw. If you just need to make straight cuts, this is a great tool. I wish they would have had this when I started, especially for cutting plywood and other sheet goods. This is literally a game changer because of the price. It's about $99. You get all the tracks and you get just put your current circular saw on there and you've basically got a track saw. The only drawback to this was that it couldn't do bevel cuts. But if you're just cutting plywood, you probably don't need that. You just need a way to cut straight, accurate cuts on longer runs like plywood. And this is a real game changer for those who just need something on a budget to cut straight cuts. Cut straight cuts. Should be a t-shirt. Cut straight cuts. Next up is dust collection. Beginners don't necessarily need a very expensive dust collection, if any at all. For a long time, I had zero dust collection other than a leaf blower, and I would just blow the dust out of the garage or the little shed when I first started back there. The first dust collection you should buy is dust collection for your lungs. You don't want that stuff going in your lungs, and if you don't have anything at all, just get a dust mask. I like these. This is called RZ mask. I like the M2 model. That's the model you see here. And one of the main reasons I like them is because they have replaceable filters. When this filter gets dirty, you can literally pop one out, pop a new one back in, and you're good to go. And they're very comfortable to wear. The main thing I like about these, it's easy on, easy off, and they work. It's just gonna filter out that fine dust. And if it's easy to use and it's comfortable to wear, you'll actually use this more than you would something that's uncomfortable or takes a long time to put on and off. They have a bunch of different colors depending on what you like. I like the brighter colors mainly because it's just easier to see when it's laying around the shop versus the more muted colors. But that's the first thing you should buy, in my opinion, is a dust mask, because you probably don't, starting out, have shop vacs or even dust extractors or anything like that to help filter out that dust first. This is the first defense. After the dust mask, just a simple shop vac, and something just to start collecting the dust as much as possible. These can range from very expensive to very cheap, depending on what model you like, what brand you like. It really doesn't matter. I think you should look for one that's over 5 or 6 horsepower. I like that power range because it just gives you a little bit more suction, and they just work well. I actually reviewed a Craftsman a while back, 6.5 horsepower. For this price point and this horsepower, I think 6.5 peak horsepower, very, very good value option there. And you can pick that up at Lowe's or even Amazon. I'll link to it in the description. One drawback to a shop vac is it will fill up with dust pretty quick, especially if you're using it on some bigger tools. One fix for that is just to get a dust separator, and there are tons on the market. I have this Dust Right separator that I use for a long time. That works extremely well. There's also the mullet that I did a video on that works really well also. What that does is separate the bulk of the dust, in other words, the bigger chips and things like that, before it goes into the shop vac, so it doesn't clog up your filters or fill up your bag or even fill up your shop vac. It literally just leaves you with a bin of dust, much like a dust collector would, that you can empty and then just start all over. If you are looking to get into some budget dust extraction or dust collection, you have to check out the Harbor Freight dust extractor. This is a HEPA dust extractor. Comes with dual HEPA filters, which is going to filter down to like 0.3 microns, that really, really fine dust that you may see floating around that gets in your lungs. It's very unhealthy. That dust extractor, for the price, I think it's like $2.99, excellent value. Excellent value, especially on smaller tools like sanders, routers, circular saws, or even track saws. It's just a really good option for a budget level dust extractor. For larger tools, I would absolutely suggest that separator before it goes into the shop vac or the extractor. And then of course the leaf blower to blow out the rest, which is, I still do that today. That's how I stay so clean. If you want to stick around after number 5, I got a bonus tool you don't need that you can work around. The next thing beginners don't need is a router table. Now, router tables are very nice to have. I've reviewed some budget options as well on this topic. I think it was a skill. It's a really good option for a budget. But if you don't have space or you don't have the budget to get one, but you already have a palm router, there's some things you can do to get around not having that router table to do some very cool stuff. First is an edge guide. Your palm router either came with an edge guide or likely has an option to purchase one, very inexpensive. I use edge guides all the time for these palm routers. They are super handy to have. Like if you're building the jointing jig, you use an edge guide to keep you away from the edge a certain distance so that you can get that nice straight groove. This is a good option when you don't have a router table with a fence. It basically replaces that option because you have that edge guide. You could use these for a ton of different applications as well, whether that be installing tabletop fasteners or creating grooves, dados, dovetails, all kinds of stuff with the edge guide. And remember this little jewel, you can use this to be an edge guide for your router. I did that when I was making the portable workbench. I just used this carpenter square fence with this actual carpenter square that you see here to route those cross dovetails in my portable workbench. So you can use edge guides for this, long or short like this one, to do various tasks with your palm router. You can also use templates with your palm router with a flush trim bit. This is a KREG brand. I like this one because it has a handle on top and you can do radiuses and chamfers on the edges of your boards. This just dresses things up, especially if you're doing like cutting boards or charcuterie boards or even furniture that you need a rounded edge at the end of a board. These work well and they're not that expensive. There's also some aluminum versions you can get on Amazon that are a little less expensive, but you do put your hands a little closer to that bit, and so it just depends on how comfortable you are with that. Then of course you can buy just templates like these or make your own. These are just acrylic templates. I'll drop a link to where they have some very cool ones like a dog tag and different shapes for charcuterie boards, things like that. Is you just use the flush trim bit along with your router and a template, and then you can start making, and you can batch out things like this to sell, to give as gifts, all that kind of stuff. You can use these on the router table, obviously, or you can just use them with your palm router and a flush trim bit. That's where these really shine, and you don't need that router table. All right, the bonus is a drill press. Now, drill presses can be, I have a benchtop WEN that I've had for a long time. I think I gave around 200, 250 for it several years ago. It's been a good tool to have in the shop, but that was not a priority of mine starting out. But there were several times that I needed to be able to drill straight holes. I would love to have had a drill press, but there's ways around it. So Mousecraft makes this drill guide, and you can use this with any drill to drill various angles holes as well as straight up and down holes. If you don't have a drill press or you don't have room for a drill press or the budget for a drill press, but you do need to make straight, accurate holes, repeatable over and over and over, you should check out this. It's very inexpensive for what you're getting, and it will work with your current drills that you already have. So that's a good way to get around not having a drill press. This is also very useful if you do have a drill press and you just need to take it portable to drill a hole on a product or a project that you can't get to the drill press. Maybe it's already done, you just need a hole, whatever the case may be. One thing to keep in mind is these are fixes to get around not having the big tools. The big tools are there for a reason, and people buy them for a reason because they do make things faster and easier. I'll drop some of my best budget picks for those tools in the description below so you can go check them out for yourself to see if they fit your budget and your needs. If you're looking for some easy to follow step-by-step woodworking plans for beginners, I put together a beginner bundle, a bunch of different projects for you if you're a beginner to help you get started. You can build those, keep for yourself, or you can sell those projects once they're built to make some extra money. And to help you out, if you use the code BEGIN, I will give you 20% off that already discounted bundle just to help you a little further. Go check it out, 731woodworks.com/store. Curious what power tools you did without and how you got around not having those when you started? Let me know that in the comments. This may not be genius, but it is a stack of awesomeness, and the reason is because this might just be a game changer for your shop storage and organization. A couple of years ago, I made it a mission of mine to get organized in this shop, and small parts organization was a huge part of that because when you know where stuff is at and you can find it and access it easy, it makes your life easier and it makes your projects go faster because you get more productive. These are affordable small storage, and that's key because a lot of people look at Pack Out or Tough Built or some of these other Flex on the market, and they see all these storage solutions that are really nice. I love my Pack Out, but they're also very expensive. These are very affordable and they're well made, and that's one of the things you give up a lot of times when you start looking for affordable storage is they're not well made and they're kind of jinky and they don't work right. These, from our friends at Tools, are very nice. Now there are three sizes here, a large, a medium, and a small. The smalls, I wish they clip together. They don't, but if you just need something kind of small to take on and off the job site or around the shop, that may be the way to go. I like the medium and the large. I do like that they all clip together. These do come in 2 and 4 packs, and you can arrange them or stack them as high as you want. Now all three have adjustable or modular bins that you can move out of there. The front bins are all fixed, but the back bins are modular where you can pull those out and make those as big or as small as you need for whatever you're trying to store. Doesn't matter if it's a tool, if it's bits, if it's screws, or whatever you're trying to get organized. These are absolutely awesome. One thing I love are these large storage boxes. You can get a set of 4 for very inexpensive, and what you can store in these will amaze you. If you remove a couple of inserts, they will fit the 5-inch sanding disc perfectly. So you could literally get a couple, 3 or 4 of these and organize all the grits of your sandpaper, and you'll know at a glance about how much sandpaper you have left, so it's time to reorder or get some more if you go to the store. I like the fact that I could do that. So you could have one box with 60 and 80 grit for the coarser sanding. You have one box for the 120 to 220 for the medium grit. Then you can also have, 320 all the way up in the other box. Basically have 3 boxes of sandpaper, all the levels. You can label those on the front and be able to know exactly what sandpaper you're getting when you grab the box. Just a good option. And of course, you can use it to store brad nails, screws of any size really that you're going to use in the shop, in or around the shop, in the medium or the small or the large. Super well made. Like, okay, you're gonna make me do it. I weigh 200 pounds, unless I eat cake.
Cake is my weakness.
This is pretty good. Like, they're not budging. The tops are very solid. I'm standing right in the middle of this top. I'm literally standing right on top of this box, and as you can see, very little flex on the top of it, especially for 200 pounds on top of it. They're not meant for that, but if you stack them in your truck or in the toolbox or anything like that, something heavy gets on them, you don't have to worry about that top cracking and breaking, and that's what I was getting at. So they're very, very well made. Nice boxes. One place these small boxes really shine is storage of bits, like router bits, driver bits, any kind of bits you got. Quality for the price point you get, that's what's mind-blowing about this storage setup. It is nowhere near Milwaukee prices or flex prices or any of that, but it's equal quality as those. And from what I can tell, just well-made storage boxes for a fraction of the cost. That'll blow your mind. Harbor Freight just dropped a bombshell on the woodworking world. This could change small shop dust collection forever. This is the Hercules HEPA dust extractor. Let's go. This is one of the least expensive dust extractors I've seen on the market to date. And yeah, I bought this with my own money. Now this does have dual HEPA filters in it, and these are auto clean filters. So every 10 seconds or so, you're gonna hear this thing auto clean, and I'll show you what that sounds like here. And this is a lot like other dust extractors. You get an on and off switch as well as the power switch or the power plug switch. It does have an onboard outlet here. You'll plug your tool into that, whether that be your routers or your sanders or whatever you're gonna be using with this. You can plug it in there, turn it to the power outlet setting, and then when you power your tool on, this will come on automatically. I always love that about dust extractors because you don't have to power one tool and then the other tool. It's just a no-brainer to do. If for whatever reason you don't want the auto clean feature on, you can turn that off and on with a button right here on the front. This also has an adjustable suction level so you can go from minimum to maximum. So let's power this on and see exactly how loud it is, and then we'll hear the auto clean feature as well. Very sucky.
Oh, it's very sucky.
So one thing that's interesting here to me is powering it on, it wasn't overly loud. I thought it would be a little more loud. So it's not as loud as, say, a shop vac is. This is a wet vac too. You just remove the bag and the filters and you can use it just like you would any wet vac on the market, which is nice. One feature that will probably get overlooked by a lot of people, but it's been a frustration of mine with the DeWALT dust extractor, is how well this rolls around. This has nice, beefy, big back tires on there. That really does help it move around the shop, especially if you got a cord or something laying there. It just rolls over those easier. These are locking casters on the front too, so you can lock those down if you don't want it to move around when you pull it by the hose. And speaking of the hose, it does lock in there. There's a little key on top of the hose that slides into the slot on the dust extractor, and you twist it and it locks it into place. And that way, if you are dragging it around by the hose, because we all do, then the hose won't come undone, unhooked, unplugged. You know what I mean? This might be the first time in history a Festool's been hooked up to a Hercules vac. It's probably some Festool sin to do so. I don't know. Here we go. So I do got it connected to the outlet on the Hercules so that it should power up when I power on this sander. Instant. What I want to point out is you can hear the auto clean slightly dip the decibel level that you're hearing coming from that. That's when it's cleaning those filters, just so you know. So using the Festool sander, I sanded some maple, I sanded some walnut. I see minimal dust here. It's not collecting on the pad. It's not collecting on the surface of the wood. It's just collecting into the dust extractor, which is where it goes. You can really hear, you can audibly hear the air being pulled through that sander. And if you're thinking, well, you're using a high-end sander, so it's designed to be used with a dust extractor, so it's working better. I'm gonna hook it up to the best sander under $100 in my opinion. That's the DeWALT sander. I think this is one of the best value sanders on the market. I've had one since I started in 2017. Sanding with that, you also notice very minimal dust on the wood or on the sandpaper. I could literally feel the air being pulled through this thing by going by my fingers. It was literally pulling the air through these vents. So it's absolutely going to keep your sanders cooler, which will make it last longer. So I hooked this up to my flex router just to see how it would do on an edge profile, because that's really going to tell a story. Because if you're just doing a through cut or a dado, it should collect a lot of that dust. But if you're doing an edge profile, because one side of that bit is exposed to the air, it throws dust out no matter who you got it hooked up to, whether it's Hercules or the Festool. But I was fairly impressed with this because it has so much airflow. There was minimal dust coming off, even an edge profile cut like this. So it does do a really good job there. Next thing I wanted to do was hook it up to a track saw. So I chose the Milwaukee track saw here just to see how it do. Now I've done previous videos showing this track saw hooked up to a Festool dust extractor, and it's not 100% dust collection. It's going to be difficult to get 100% dust collection on any track saw really. Now I hooked it up to the Hercules and I saw very, very, very similar results as the Festool. You get a little bit of dust coming off there, but it's very, very manageable. How many times did I say very? One nice thing Harbor Freight did here with their Hercules dust extractor is they gave you two different adapters. For instance, this one will not fit in the flex router. However, the extra one they gave you will. And to swap these out is very simple. You literally just loosen and tighten them on while the threads are backwards. So righty is loosey, lefty is tighty. Just remember that. And then vice versa is this one, the one that fit in the flex, won't fit in the Milwaukee track saw, but the other one will. And it also fit in the DeWALT sander as well as the Festool sander. So you can see that you get various tool adapters that'll work here. So what's the one thing I would change about this if I could? And that absolutely would be the time it takes to shut this off after you turn the tool off if it's plugged in. Now if you just use it with the manual switch, as soon as you turn it off, it goes off. But if you have a tool plugged into this, turn the sander on. It takes 15 to 20 seconds. We sped that up for your convenience. 15 to 20 seconds before this thing turns off. I understand wanting to clean the dust out of the hose, blah, 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 but one of the things I've always liked about the Festool and have mentioned before is about 3 seconds and it turns itself off. Why does that matter? Well, when I turn this off, I want it to go off. I don't want it to just keep running 15 to 20 seconds. It's a minor quip, but it is one that really annoys me and I would change that if I could. Otherwise, I don't think you could go wrong with this if you're in the market for a dust extractor and you're on a budget. These are 10 of my very favorite tools under $30 that I regret not knowing about sooner. And if you stick around, I'll show you one of the most popular tools under $30 I've ever shown on the channel as a bonus. Let's go. Number one on the list, in no particular order because all of these are absolutely amazing. This is a Japanese flush trim saw, and this one is made by a company called Suizan. I like this one because it's very affordable and it works extremely well. It's made with good metals and they last a long time. One of the things I like about this one is on each side it has different teeth. So on one side you have teeth for hardwood and on the other side you have teeth for softwood. And basically you have a coarse and a fine tooth depending on the side you choose. It's a nice little feature. This I use a bunch on flush trimming on dowels mostly. But I can also use this to finish a cut. Say if my cut didn't go all the way through and I still like just a little bit, I can finish up with this one so it doesn't tear the veneer, things like that on plywood. This is a really good one. It has a flexible blade so it lets you really get flush on your board so you can really flush off those dowel rods, which is where I use this the most. For under 30 bucks, it's a no-brainer. Next on the list, one of my favorite little tiny squares I've ever bought. This is the DFM small square, and what this is great for is finding center on boards as well as some other things we can use this for in the shop. It's literally handy as a shirt pocket. I like this thing, I use it all the time. Now what I like about it is it does come with these two pins that you can drop in, and then you can use that to find center on especially thinner boards where this really shines. In the center it is made for a mechanical pencil to go right in there so it doesn't move around and cause any inaccuracies. It works extremely well. And another thing you can do with this is basically use it like a small speed square. You can drop those pins on the bottom part and then you can ride it along the edge of the material and this will be perfectly square. I checked it against my Woodpecker square, perfectly square, no issues there, just using those pins. There's no slop or play in those pins, so it works extremely well. Another thing this is useful for is if you're sharpening your chisels, you want to make sure those are perfectly square on the end. You can use this to check the square inside of small boxes, small drawers, a bunch of different uses for this little thing. Just pick one up, put it in your shop. Next on the list, by far, by far the favorite tape measure I've ever used. I've been using tape measures since 1990-ish, probably before that, when I was a kid on the farm. Started construction in 1995 using the old Stanley, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody used one of those. This, though, is the Fast Cap old standby. I love this one. It's a 16-foot tape, perfect length for the shop. I love these. I have like 4 of these in the shop, but there's also another version that's a lefty-righty version, so you can read the tape from either side. And a lot of people, especially beginners, really like this version of the tape because it does have your increments marked on there if you're not quite familiar with how to read a tape measure. So like 1/8, quarter, 3/8, half, that sort of thing. If you're not familiar or comfortable reading a tape measure, this is a great beginner tape measure that'll really get you familiar with all of those fractions. I know us in America, we use imperial measurements. We're okay with that. If you're not using the metric system and you're okay with that, we're happy for you. One of the things I like about this tape measure is it has a pencil sharpener on there, so if you're using a regular number 2 pencil, you can sharpen that right there on the back. I do like that the blade kind of sets flush with this tape measure, so if you do happen to drop it, it's less likely to damage the end of that blade, which will bend, which will cause it to be inaccurate. Now, one thing I will tell you though, if you're using a tape measure in the shop for a project, I don't care if you've got 4 of these and they're exactly the same. Only use one for the entire project because some tape measures, depending on this blade on the end, can be off from each other. If you're trying to measure a 12-inch board, it may be 12 inches with this tape measure and you grab the exact same brand, it may be 12 1/8. It could be off that much, so just use one. Next up, everybody probably should have one of these. If you don't already, most people probably do, but these are 1, 2, 3 setup blocks. They come in pairs for less than $30. They're some of the most useful setup tools for your shop. You can use these as squares because they are absolutely perfectly square on all sides. And you can use these to set up the distance on your table saw fence because they are absolutely perfectly as we're going to get 1 inch by 2 inch by 3 inch. And because these come in pairs, you can use them in combination with each other. Matter of fact, this one comes with a connection kit and there's several other setup options you can do with that. I have a whole video on how to set this up. These are like 25 uses for these things. I'll link in the description. But for setting up a table saw fence, you can use these to set up 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 6 inches away from the blade, and it'd be perfectly 6 inches every time. And this is also useful for double checking the measurement is correct on your table saw alignment marker. So if you set it up at 2 inches, you put this 2 inches from the blade, then you look at the indicator, make sure it's exactly 2 inches because these are perfectly 2 inches or 3 or 1 or however you want to orient these. You can also use these to set up the blade height, bit height, things like that with these. They're extremely useful to have in the shop. They're also kind of weighty, so if you need a paperweight or just something to hold down one end of something, these work great for that as well. One thing I like to use the 1, 2, 3 setup blocks for is an offset at the table saw. For instance, if I'm making the 2-inch cuts over and over and over, what I can do is just use this setup block and set the table saw at 4 inches and then use the setup block as a 2-inch spacer, and then I'll be able to cut my 2-inch blocks because 4 minus 2 is 2. And I can just cut those over and over and over without having to worry about kickback. Because if you get those small parts jammed between the blade and the fence, if I was ripping them 2 inches, it could be a pretty bad day. Don't forget to stick around for the bonus of the most popular tool I've shown that's under 30 bucks. Coming soon. And to go along with those, next on the list, these are brass setup bars. I love having this set of setup bars for a specific reason. Well, several reasons, but the reason I like these more than the other ones I've had, these have the measurements etched into them. At a glance, you can tell that it's a half, a 3/8, a quarter, all the way down to a 1/16. So you can really use these to dial things in. I like these because you can use these to set up your bit heights and your blade heights, and you can use them in conjunction with your 1, 2, 3 blocks. If you need 1.5 inches, because this is 1, 2, 3, there's no 1/2 inch measurements on there. You can literally set this down on the flat side and then use the 1/2 inch setup block here to set up your 1.5 inches. You can do that by feel right on top of that blade or that bit, and in any increment in there you can add 1/4 inch to it, and then you have 1 1/4 inches, 2 1/4, however you need to set that up. This is a good combination for setting up your tools in your shop. Next on the list, pretty simple product that I wish I'd have known about sooner are sanding mice. Sanding mice. This is a sanding mouse. You can get these in 2 packs as well. They work extremely well because they use any hook and loop sandpaper and they just loop on there or hook on there. These are great for just doing a little finishing touches, knocking off rough spots. I like to use these kind of as a final sand with the grain before finishing, and where they really shine, in my opinion, is if you're putting lacquer or if you're putting down poly, anything like that. This will really knock off some of that roughness, before you put on the next coat. Of course, if you do use these to sand, you'll take a microfiber and wipe off any extra dust before putting your finish on. But these are really good for finish sanding and just knocking down rough spots. Like if you cut plywood, it's got a little splintering, you can use these to knock those off. If you use a regular orbital sander, a lot of times they're too aggressive, they'll cause too much damage, where these are more for fine sanding, and they just are cheap and they work. Next up, a very useful tool for almost any woodworker in any shop, and that is a ruler, but this one comes with 2 stops. Much like the Polini pocket rule. This is a 12-inch Polini pocket rule. This thing costs $55. Just the rule with 1 slide. This costs less than half that. 23 bucks for the 12-inch ruler and 2 slides. It's a stainless steel ruler, so you don't have to worry about it corrosion. These slides are aluminum. They come with a really nice brass knurled knob, so that brass, softer metal, it won't damage your stainless steel ruler when you snug it up. And you have those 2 slides, which you can do a lot of functions with. For one, you can do parallel lines to the edge of your board if you need to scribe those lines. You can set up a 2-inch by 2-inch notch if you wanted to cut that out of the end of your board, or 3-inch by 3-inch if you were building cabinets and you wanted that toe kick. You could also use this to set bit heights, blade heights, using the slide to set that height if you so chose to do that, or check the depths of holes, all kinds of stuff. And when you snug these up, say I wanted a 4-inch square line, I snug this up at 4 inches, I can scribe that line. It's perfectly square to the edge of that board. I check that with my benchmark square, as you can see here, nice square line. These are very, very handy to have in the shop. And at $23, it's a must-have. What I once called my grandpa's clamp. These are hand screw clamps. I seriously thought they were for old timers. I didn't even want one in the shop because I just thought that's what they used to use way back in the day, like in the 1920s. It's not true. We still use these in the shop, and since I've gotten these, they're super handy. The main thing I like these for in my shop, I don't have any clamping, vertical clamping capability on my assembly table, because most of us make an assembly table or an outfeed table. It's not necessarily a woodworking bench. Most modern woodworkers, I would say, don't have a true woodworking bench like a Shoresberg, whatever you call those, with those fancy clamps. They're really nice. I don't have one. This will help you take the place of that, because you can use these in combination to create vertical clamping on your workpiece. You can also use these to hold small parts if you need to drill into them at the drill press. You can use these to help you hold panels upright while you get everything else in place. So if you're assembling cabinets, you can also use these as stop blocks at the router table, just screw those down as a stop block. And because these 2 screws are independent, you can hold weird shaped pieces, things like that. Just a good all-around option to have in the shop, and they come in 2 packs for less than $30. Grab some. Next, probably one of my favorite accessories, woodworking accessories I've ever bought, are bench cookies. I use these almost every time I build something or I'm in the shop doing various tasks, sanding, routing. They're absolutely great, and they're very expensive. You get a 4-pack for less than $30. I think they're less than $20 actually. These are really cool because they have nice grippy pads on either side of them. I use them especially when I'm cutting or breaking down my sheet goods with the track saw. I can lay these under the material and then make my cuts. I also use these when I'm routing various pieces, trays, things like that, and sanding things, because it keeps everything in place without moving. These are very nice to have. There's not a lot to say about them other than they're just awesome, especially for the price. However, some people prefer to use hockey pucks. They say they're kind of similar, but a hockey puck is slicker on the top and bottom, but you can absolutely use these if you want. I'll throw a link in the description to a 12-pack, I think. They're very inexpensive, but this is my Preds official game puck. Go Preds. One of the things you need in a woodworking shop is a way to keep your hands away from blades and bits, and I love these push blocks for that specific reason. These are the micro jig gripper block. They call these a smart push block, and I like these because they have 2 little feet on either end that will drop down and catch the back of the boards. These are absolutely amazing at the jointer, just for helping you push that board through. I also like these at the bandsaw. They're perfectly 90 degrees, so they have a foot on there that will help them stand up perfectly straight. Use these when resawing boards, absolutely great for that. And you can also use these at the table saw for regular push block operations. Router table, love these at the router table. All around a great option, less than $30 for one of these. I suggest picking up 2. These are some of the best push blocks on the market for those tasks. I love these things, use them all the time. Well, retail price on these are $35, but they're almost always on sale for way less than that. Currently they're like 24 bucks, so just keep an eye on the price. If it happens to go over 30, just wait a little bit, come back, and they'll be under 30, because they stay under 30 all the time. Like 99% of the time. I lost count. I think this is number 10, but if it's not, happy bonus to you. But there is another one coming after this, the most popular tool. If you're looking for a very good square that would rival any Woodpecker square on the market, specifically the aluminum delve square from Woodpeckers, it's like 90 bucks. These are $30 a piece. I can't find them individually. If I find them, I will link them below individually, but they come in as a set as $30 each, so it makes them right at 60 for both of these. They're both very nice, very useful to have in the shop. These are eye gauging bench squares. These are very, very nice, extremely accurate. You're not going to have to worry about any accuracy issues. They have a ton of features built right into them. If you remember the DFM small square I showed at the beginning of this video, it has a pin. This also has a pin, but it stores right in the end. Both these have very similar features, so I'll just go over the smaller of the two. The larger one also has the same features. You get scribe marks every 1/16 of an inch all the way up through there. I also like that they put the markings on the base here starting at 0, so you can use this to set up blades, bits, things like that. Just a really good option there. Again, it does have this stored pin that screws in so you don't lose that. It will drop into any of these holes so that you can use that to set up angles very, very quickly. It also fits really snug so you don't have to worry about accuracy issues. And then, of course, you can store it back in the end so you don't lose it, which is a good option to have. It also has an offset base, so if you're doing Mortise and tenon, things like that, finding the center of boards, you can do that with 3/4 inch stock here. Whether you want to do Mortise and tenon on one side, you can set that up, or on the other side, you can find the center of the board quickly using that offset base. These are really nice, very accurate squares, and again, about $30 a piece, and you do get the larger one and the smaller one. This is a really good combo to have in the shop for both of these. Another great thing about these eye gauge squares, they come in a nice case, good foam padding, so if you wanted to store these in a nice protected box, throw it in a drawer, not worry about them getting bunged up, there you go. Before we get to the most popular tool I've ever shown, I get questions about this every time I show it, every time I use the pencil on video. This is the Pentel Graph Gear 1000, I think. The lead size is 0.9. I keep this literally right here every day in my True Work pants. I love these pants. This is one of the best pencils. Yeah, it's about $9 a piece. You're like freaking out right now thinking, I'm not spending $9 on a pencil. Well, I bought 2 of these because I didn't want to spend $9 on a pencil, but I did, and I've kept up with both of them. It's absolutely a miracle. Because it's $9, I don't want to lose it, so I always stick it right back in that pocket. I have it with me constantly in the workshop. It's one of the better pencils you can buy. It's a mechanical pencil, so you can just refill the lead, and it fits nicely in all of these modern tools with these scribe holes that you can use for center finders, scribing with these squares. It's just one of those pencils that you just use all the time, and a lot of people will comment on these videos when I talk about this pencil and say they have them and love them, so you should probably check one out if you don't have one yet. Get some True Works, put it in the pocket, you'll never lose it. As promised, one of the most popular tools I've ever shown on this channel under $30 is a table saw accessory called the thin rip jig. Now you can get these anywhere between $25 and $35 depending on the model. I'll try to link to these $30 ones in the description. This is one of the most used accessories on my table saw when I need to cut thin strips. For instance, on my miter station I put thin walnut strips on the front just to give it a little contrast, as well as on my router stand. It just gives it a nice contrasting look. I like the look of it, and I use the thin rip jig to cut those strips out. They can be all exactly 1/8 inch thick, and it just makes things much, much easier when using it on a table saw. If you don't have one of these, pick one up, you'll love it. These are 5 brand new RYOBI tools that even the haters would love. Let's go. Number 5 may surprise you. First on the list, this one surprised me. I did not see this coming. This is RYOBI's brand spanking new. It will be coming out August 2024, the brushless trim router. This is their first brushless trim router that I'm aware of. The previous version, which I have here, there's actually 2 previous versions. The original version, it had a really big shoulder on it. I wasn't really a fan of that at all. It was just kind of top heavy, kind of awkward. They revised that with the brushed version here, as you see. It's quite a bit different than the new version, other than just what was inside. It worked well. I was a fan of this tool actually, but a brushless version is even better. You're going to get more power and more battery life out of a brushed motor, so that's good. And they refine this quite a bit. It's more than meets the eye here. Let me show you. First and foremost, that branding that's on the side is gone, which I'm pleased with. We do get a better base on this router, which is very welcome. Check this out. The older, when I say older version, I mean the one previous to this one, not the very old one. The older version has a plastic casing and all. This has a cast base. I really like that. It's much more robust, and it doesn't add a ton to the weight. It's a little more weighty, but not by a lot. You can barely tell the difference. But I do like that it is quite a bit better made, honestly. And you get this grip here that's a soft rubber grip. It's really nice. And the way this adjusts is very similar to the old style, but this clip seems to be improved quite a bit. And then the color just contrasts better, in my opinion, the black versus the gray. It just looks better overall. Now we do get 2 LEDs on the bottom just to help you see, which is always great on these trim routers. It does come with an edge guide, which is awesome. I love that they included that with this model. All you do is screw these into the base, and then you slide on that edge guide and position it anywhere you want. So if you're cutting grooves or dados or anything like that, this is going to give you a really good, accurate way to do that with that edge guide. I love having edge guides with all of my routers, so this is a welcome bonus. First power on this brand new RYOBI router. Soft start, and it stops fast. I like that. Doing my first round over with this, which is typically what these trim routers are for, edge profiles, chamfers, roundovers, things like that. This is where these routers really shine. And if you don't have one, this is a good option for you because it does include that edge guide and you can do that trim router operation. It's just a good overall upgrade from RYOBI, and I'm glad to see this come about. I do like that they beefed it up a little bit with that more robust casing. Now this will run on the 18-volt platform. Doesn't matter what 18-volt batteries you have, but it does do better with those high-performance batteries. And RYOBI is coming out with a tabless technology battery that'll be out soon. As far as the controls go on this, it's very similar to the older version. You get the flip switch, but you also get the fine-tune adjustment. I actually like this style of adjustment. It's very similar to the Milwaukee, which is kind of known that TTI owns both Milwaukee as well as Rigid and RYOBI. So all of them adjust the same or similar, and I do like that style just because it's so easy to fine tune things, and then when you lock it in place, it stays. Now, there are some like the Milwaukee that when I got them, I had to tighten that nut down right there just to give this a little bit more snug so it grabs it a little tighter so it doesn't move. But once you do that one time, it'll be ready to roll. If you have that issue with this RYOBI, which I'm not saying you will, but if you do notice it slipping during operation, you can tighten that up just maybe a quarter turn. It'll be good to go. This router is also variable speed. You get 15,000 to 30,000 RPMs depending on what setting you get, from 1 all the way up to 6. You also get this dust port adapter if you wanted to hook up a dust hose to it, and that will actually, you take the base off and it will snap in right there. You loosen up these 4 bolts, move this base off, this will pop out, and you can pop this one in. This router was sent to me by RYOBI for review, but no money changed hands, and I don't keep these. If you want to check out this router or any other tool you see in this video, there'll be links in the description and the pinned comments, as well as you can click that View Products button. As soon as these are available, they'll be linked right there and in the comments. At the time of filming, this is July 27, 2024, and this is set to release sometime in August 2024. So depending on when you're watching this video is when this will be available. Now, speaking of these batteries real quick, before we move on to number 2, if you don't have any of these high performance batteries or even the tabless batteries when they're available, you will see a significant difference in the power and battery life of your RYOBI tools if you upgraded to those, if you haven't done so already. So it may be worth checking out if you've been lacking in power and battery life. Number 2 on the list, this one surprised me. I did not expect this from RYOBI at all. You may be impressed with this, and you could probably use this in your shop and around your house. Check this out. This is RYOBI's brand new Tri-Power Tripod LED light. Now, why would you need a light in the shop? Well, sometimes you just need extra light, especially if you don't have proper shop lighting or it's just dim or dark. Something like this may come in handy, but the reason I like this to have around the house, for one, is when the lights go out. Every winter, we'll get an ice storm of some sort and our power goes out for sometimes days. Having a battery-powered light source is nice to have. But the reason they call this Tri-Power is because of this right here. And they've been doing this a lot more here lately, and I like to see that. You can use either 18 volt, there's 60 volt, or you can just plug it in with an extension cord and have power without having to have batteries. So this is really good for shop settings. If you just need that extra light, you don't want to top any of your batteries, you can just plug it in. So that's really good option too. Now, what's really cool about this is this piece on top. Now this light has tons of adjustments on it. You can tilt this all the way over past 90 degrees, and each of these little light wings also adjust. And as far as the light goes, there's 4 brightness modes. You get a single panel, which is just this one at 800 lumens, either low at 1300, medium 2300, or high, which is all 4 of those shining as bright as they can for 3800 lumens. This will really light up your shop or work area. This light will extend up to 7 feet high, so you get up off the floor, up out of your way, and be able to provide that light shining down, or you can shine it up toward the ceiling, especially when the lights are out, hit that ceiling, make the whole room glow. So that's really good. And my favorite feature of this light, besides the triple power options, is this head right here, because you can put so many different things on there, not just this 4-head light that comes with it, but you could also use other lights or fans or radios or speakers. Anything that will set on top of that in that lifestyle area, fans, lights, radios, will plug right into that. You can just set it right down on there and use the battery power or any of the triple option power on there and be able to power those for a long time. Now this does collapse up into a fairly nice space-saving design, so you can stack this pretty much anywhere you want or lay it on a shelf or anything like that. It's going to take up minimal room as far as the tower light goes. And the legs lock down so you can carry it by the handle. Now because they designed that head on the tower light to fit 18-volt batteries, you can run this light off of an 18-volt battery. It probably doesn't come across on camera, but it's pretty bright. It's a pretty bright light if you need a work light, especially one that you can detach and use with batteries, and you have the tower, so it's a really good option for work lights if you're in the market. Will that 40-volt battery power a drill on top of the tower light? We're going to find out, but you got to stay tuned. Number 3 on the list, a real brief overview of a new work light they just come out with, is this little thing. Now, again, 18-volt battery platform, so it uses all your other batteries. It's got the trigger design to turn the lights on from high, medium, low. It does have a nice hook on there to hook it, hang it wherever you want, and a wrist strap and a little carabiner. So you need that. What I like about this light is it's compact, it's bright. So if you're having to get into side cabinets or dark spaces, things like that, or if you work on cars, things like that, this will be a good option for you as well. This will also be a good option just for a temporary workbench light. As I get older, it's harder to see, especially close up. So having something like this I can just set on the workbench and move around is really, really handy. And this head does articulate, so you can move this in pretty much any position you're gonna want. And that hook that does hang on things does pivot. Out of all 5 tools I'm showing you, this one is the most impressive to me. And I love listening to music in the shop. It's just, when you get in the shop and start working, you kind of get in your own zone. It really takes the stress off. It's one of the best therapies you can get. And then when you listen to really good music, especially good sounding music, next level. This thing blew me out of the water on how good it sounds. Now, if you've watched the channel at all, I'm a huge fan of this Festool Top Rock. I have it right back here. It's literally just a job site style radio. It's one of the best sounding job site radios I've ever listened to until now. This RYOBI has such full bass and the highs, mainly because it has a 50-watt subwoofer in here. It also has, I think, 2 15-watt mid-range speakers. So you're getting a full range of the sounds, and it just sounds good. Check this out. That's good. Not only that, you can connect up to 100 other Bluetooth speakers like this from RYOBI. Why you would need 100 speakers, I don't know. If you have a bigger shop, you want to fill the whole shop up with sound, you can use stuff like this. They connect Bluetooth to this, and also they power on and off with this radio, so one control for all. It's really easy to connect your Bluetooth just like you would any other Bluetooth device, and it does have a USB connection, so if you have a media player like an old iPod, I love those things, iPod Classic, probably one of my favorites, you can connect one of those up here, probably use that as well as your media playing device. This thing is robust, y'all. Robust. It weighs a decent amount. This does have the RYOBI link system so that you're able to connect this onto toolboxes or wall mounts, things like that. And this is dual power, so you can use your 18-volt batteries, or you can plug it in so you don't have to worry about batteries if you're just using this in your garage. I'm telling you, if you crank the volume up on this, your neighbors will hear you bumping in your garage. I'm telling you, it is that good. Overall, as far as controls and stuff, it's really simple. There's very little going on here, which is fine with me because most all your controls, you're gonna be playing with your music on your phone, Bluetooth streaming it to this anyway. So that's a positive. It's really simple to set up. Play, pause, volume button, and skip and reverse buttons are all right there. Your Bluetooth link, those 2 chain links together is where you'll push that to connect one of these up. But other than that, it's just a pretty overall simple design, but absolutely amazing sound. If you have a chance to play with one of these in a Home Depot or something, go check it out. It'll blow you away, the sound quality. Last but absolutely not least, one that probably will surprise you. I bought this myself just a couple of months ago, for a reason, and then we'll get into it. Since the spring, I have been buying more and more power tools for outdoors. I bought a chainsaw and a weed eater, RYOBI brand, the 40-volt brand for my outdoor tools. I got tired of pulling on the weed eater that just wouldn't start, so I went with the battery powered. Never been happier. They work amazing. Now, on the back of the house, we have a deck that needs to be cleaned at least once a year. Usually it's about once every 2 years, so I bought this pressure washer. This thing did a really good job taking off all the slime and even the old stain before we put down new stain. It comes with 3 different tips that you can use for various spray patterns. There's 2 powers, a low and a high. It does run off those 40-volt batteries. Inside this lid, you just put the battery on and then lock this back down. This is a water sealed, so water's not gonna get in there or hurt anything. It comes with a hose, a pretty good long hose, as well as your wand. Then you just connect it up to your water hose, and it does have a soap inlet as well. Comes with that hoses too. If you own a home, maintenance of the home, or even you can use this to wash your cars or spray your driveway, clean your decks. It's just a really handy tool to have. As far as pressure goes, it does a gallon per minute at 1200 PSI full blast on the turbo mode. It did a really good job on the deck, like a really good job taking all that slime or old stain, stuff like that off. So cleaning up a deck, something like that, has plenty of power for that, as well as your driveways, sidewalks. Just a good all-around option if you're already in the RYOBI platform, especially the outdoor tools platform. I've bought all my RYOBI outdoor tools. They haven't sent me any of those. I've just been happy with those. They just work well. It's lightweight, portable. It doesn't take up a bunch of space. It's literally just handy as a shirt pocket. So if you're looking for something to help keep maintenance around your house, this might be the way to go. The one caveat I have with this tool is it does run through batteries fairly quick. I have 2 of these 6-amp 40-volt batteries and a 2-amp. If you use it on the turbo mode, it will run through the batteries fairly quickly. But on a single mode, like you're just doing the driveway or the car, they last a decent amount of time. So the moment you've been waiting for is to find out if a 40-volt battery will power an 18-volt drill. I didn't think of it, but my editor, Chris, say hi, Chris, he asked while editing if it would work, and we had to find out. So let's find out. All right, so we're gonna drop this 40-volt big old beast of a battery on there. We got the drill on top. Why you would ever want to do this, I don't know, but we're dudes and it's cool. We like more power. Let's find out. Nope, it barely comes on. You see the light flash. So is it just the drill, or will a router work? And if this doesn't work, if we plug it in with an AC power cable, will that work? We'll find out. Same thing. Will it work with an 18-volt battery before we try plugging it in on AC power? Yes. So if you needed a drill on the end of your tower light or whatever reason, it would work with an 18-volt battery. All right, we got it plugged in on AC power. Will the drill work plugged in with a cord? Same thing. So my assumption is there's some type of circuit protection or overload protection in these tools that prevents it from working. What's interesting though is on AC power plugged in, you can put your work lights on there and they will work. And you can also unplug this, throw on a 60-volt, and your work lights will still work, as well as those speakers. So there's certain, I guess they call them lifestyle products, lights, speakers, fans, things like that will still work no matter which power you choose to use. But your other tools, will not. It's probably a good safety thing, but they will work on the 18-volt. If you like any of these tools, they're linked in the description and the pinned comment, as well as you can click that View Products button right there to shop right here on YouTube. And this could be the safest, most powerful cordless router I've ever used. Remember, safest. It's got a unique feature. This is the brand new DeWALT 2¼ peak horsepower router. I bought this recently. This is a fantastic router. You got to check this out. Don't miss it. If you'd like to check this router out or anything else I talk about in this video, check out the links in the description and the pinned comments. Straight out of the box, I got to play with this briefly at Woodcraft Trade Show just a week or so ago. But just the overall ergonomics of this, the way it feels in the hand, it's just an amazingly well-made tool. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's all I can say about it. Just the feel of it, the way it's made, the looks of it matters to me. I like the way this thing was designed. I like it.
I like it a lot.
First and foremost, this is now my new favorite router for plunging, just based on this plunge base. Very ergonomic. Everything is within your finger's reach, and your hands wrap around this thing just nicely. First, let's go over the plunge features. Number one, it does have this trigger design, thumb trigger, so that you can raise and lower, and it'll stop anywhere you let go of this thumb trigger. You can also basically set it to be free plunging so that it doesn't stop. And the way you activate that is push this trigger all the way down, it'll pop into place, and then you can use this button here to lock things into place, and it will literally lock wherever you stop it at. Pretty cool feature. So now you can set this depth adjustment here. I also like that this indicator is easy to see. It's very, very easy. Really nice pinpoint accuracy if you needed that. And on the bottom, you can also fine tune this as much as you want because it's a screw style. You can literally take micro adjustments there. It does have the turret style, but it also, you can micro adjust each one of these. That's nice. I like having all of this adjustments. You can micro adjust the depth rod itself, and you can adjust each of these turrets to be set exactly where you want them. First power on. Soft start, and it will stop fast. So it has a brake on there to get that speed down fast. I like that. This has a very unique setting that makes it probably one of the safest routers you can purchase. Check this out. Right on top, you might notice what it says there, anti-rotation. I'm gonna squeeze the trigger. I'm not gonna let go of it, but it's gonna stop itself, watch. And the anti-rotation light is on. While I'm holding the trigger, when I let go, it's going to reset itself, and then you can use it as normal. What that's for is like an anti-kickback. So if you hit something, or if it gets pushed away from you, it should shut off. But what about if it falls? I'm curious about that. Only if it jerks backwards or moves side to side. It's a rotation. Here's my deal, DeWALT. If it can be turned off doing this, when it does this, it should also turn off. Can't be that hard, unless it was a patent issue, which I'm kind of thinking it might be. I love seeing that type of innovation on these tools. Now to activate the router, I just showed that you pull the safety switch down, activate it, and there is a thumb lock in there or a switch lock that you can press to keep it powered on. Not only does it have anti-rotation, it also has an overload protection or a warning to let you know that you're overloading the tool, and that's that triangle indicator there. The light will start flashing when you get it overloaded, as you see here. This also has Tool Connect, this little indicator here, and what that's for is basically it's a Bluetooth connection to a dust extractor or something like that, so that it powers on when you power this tool on. Similar to how the Bluetooth button works on the Festool dust extractor. I like that option because I use it all the time. You may notice on the turret, one of these bars are thicker than the other, and that's because this is actually hollow because the dust collection goes in through here, up through here, and then out through the top. Very similar to how this one works. The corded version, also the same way. It's a kind of a unique feature that DeWALT has. Really like to see that. Although this isn't very much improved because they give me an adapter for that dust collection. They claim this has up to 97% dust collection, even on roundovers, chamfers, etc., and we're fixing to find out. I did put this little dust shroud on. That's gonna make a massive difference in my experience. What we're gonna do is just route a roundover, which typically is very difficult to collect the dust. I mean, I'm very impressed with the dust collection. Well, when I started on that roundover, I didn't think I was on the board because there was nothing coming off. So I even moved the router back and look, I was like, oh yeah, I've already cut a little bit. Then I finished that cut, and what really struck me was the sound of that air being pulled through the router. It really makes a significant sound, so much so that I went and grabbed a handful of dust and just dropped it, and you can see it just being sucked up in there. This thing has some seriously good dust collection, the best I've ever seen on any router to date, and I've used a bunch of them. All right, so I want to cut some grooves with this router to see how powerful it is and to see if we can trigger the overload protection. Now, the first thing I did was use it on some soft 2x6s and just pine, and it cut really good. Now you will see a bunch of dust coming out, and there's a reason why that is. I'll talk about in a minute. But it powered through this pine without any issues. I was able to kind of trigger the overload light, maybe to blink once or twice if you pushed it really, really fast, like really had to really get into it. So it was plenty powerful enough to push through this. So I thought, let's try it on walnut. I would never, under normal circumstances, use a straight bit at this depth for one single pass. That's why you have the plunge router, so you can take small bites at a time. And when you use it properly, you can see the dust collection works well. When used properly, this is very good dust collection on this router. Just works well. But as far as ergonomics go, I like the handle design on this and where all the controls are right at your fingertips. This one is very, very well balanced, like very well balanced. I have zero issues with it tipping or anything like that. especially if you're doing like edge profiles and things like that. So are there any cons to this? Well, price, $349. A lot of people's gonna balk at that price. I think it's worth it, but that's me and I spent my money on it, but everybody has to make that own decision on their own. I also do wish that if we got the anti-rotation shut off, why can't we have the tip shut off too? Because what if you drop the router and you go to reach for it and uh-oh, that would be a great feature to have. But again, it may be a patent issue that I'm unaware of. I just wish if we got this going on, we should have this going on as well. Pretty happy with this router. I don't know that they could do a whole lot more to it to make it that much better, because they've done a fantastic job with this, and that's coming from a Milwaukee fanboy, y'all. I am a Milwaukee fanboy. I love their tools. I also like DeWALT. I think we can like them all. This is really gonna cause some concern in the Milwaukee world, at least to the company, or it should, because this is a much better router, in my opinion, than that Milwaukee. 2 1/4. Yeah, I said it.
I said it. And I meant it!
It's better. You can cry in the comments about it, but it is better. The pros, you've seen it, man. I'm telling you, the depth adjustment on this thing, next level, nice. Dust collection, nice. Anti-rotation, nice. Overload protection, nice. Double LEDs on the bottom, which also the Milwaukee had, but also nice. Variable speed, nice. Overall ergonomics, where everything fits in your hand is right. All the controls are right within fingertips reach, just perfect. Perfect. I don't know that they could have done anything else to make this better. Absolutely one of the most impressive cordless tools I've reviewed to date, and I've reviewed a bunch. And I'm not always easy on tools. If I don't like something, I will absolutely say it, especially if it doesn't perform right. This has been absolutely a dream. Just a super cool tool. If you're on the fence and you want one, I'm telling you, just go buy it. Buy once, cry once. You're gonna love this thing. These are 5 tools you've probably never seen before, and this could change tape measures forever. Can't wait to show you this. Let's go. If you'd like to check out any of these mind-blowing tools you see today, link in the description and the pinned comment. Go check them out for yourself. A lot of people have seen this before. This is a rigid oscillating spindle and belt sander, and it's heavy and it takes up a lot of space. But you've probably never seen this before. This is WEN's oscillating sander, and I just became aware of this a couple of weeks ago, and when I saw it, I thought, man, this is genius. Number one, it doesn't take up a massive amount of space like that rigid does. Now, you are losing the belt sander portion, but for most people, they don't use that anyway. They're just needing a spindle sander to get into tight curves or profiles and things like that. But this does have an attachment that will kind of mimic a belt sander, which is kind of cool, which we'll talk about in a minute. You could throw this in the drawer, you could put it on a shelf, it's just not going to take up a lot of space. This is a variable speed spindle sander, and you can adjust the speed on the side. It does have a dust collection port right there. It does have an edge guide right there, and then it comes with 4 different sizes of spindles. It does have 2 clamps to help you clamp it to your workbench, so you can use it as a spindle sander without it falling over or moving around. Power switch located right there on the front, and then of course you can adjust the speed on the side. And you can see it oscillating here. Clamping it to your bench couldn't be easier. Just using these 2 clamps. There's some wing nuts on there. Just snug it up. That rubber pad is just an anti-slip pad. Keep it from moving around. And when you get it snugged up on there, I don't even have this overly tight. I just got it pretty snug on the workbench. Thing's solid as rock. Now it will wiggle a little bit if you really force it, but just normal operations on sanding doesn't seem like it's moving at all. And one thing that I noticed quite quickly was that the dust collection is really good on here. Better than that big rigid or even the big WEN oscillating belt and spindle sander. Now that is an option if you need the belt sander, is just pick up the WEN. I did a full review on that a while back, and it's a really good tool. But if you don't want something that's going to take up a bunch of space, this might be a great option. Again, you can dial that speed up or down however you need it, depending on how aggressive you need to get. Be careful, because I did touch that spindle with my knuckle and it knocked the skin off pretty quickly. Good thing I've got this Milwaukee first aid kit. The Band-Aids were missing, had to find a Band-Aid, somebody stole them. That's okay, got one, put it on there, back in business. As far as the operation of this, you can swap these spindles out really easily, just using the bolt on top. Very quick, very easy to swap those out. When you're sanding, like edge sanding and things like that, that guide is great for that. And you can do longer pieces, shorter pieces. It's just a good all-around option to have that little guide there. And you can even round over the edges or corners and things like that using that guide as a prop, which I've done quite often on the other machine. So it's good to have that guide. I'm glad they included that. It's easily removable with just 2 bolts or install with 2 bolts. And those holes that it installs on are slotted, so you can move those forward and back to get the amount of sanding you want on there. Now, as far as the spindles part goes, the reason I love the spindle sander is because of parts like this. If you're making stuff that has curves and things like that, this is where it's going to shine because it'll go all the way around that profile and it does an extremely good job of getting into those cracks and crevices, curves, things like that. There's no other machine that will do that as easy as a spindle sander, and I think this is a great option because it's so small and compact. Now you can pick up extra spindles and things like that. I would highly recommend it. And the sandpaper will get dirty over time. And these are sanding erasers. They're very inexpensive. I'll link it in the description as well. Go ahead and pick one of these up because it does just a really good job of quickly knocking out the sawdust inside the grits, and then it's clean, ready to go again. Pretty sure all of these are 80 grit that come with it, so you'll need to pick up some more finer grit sandpaper if you're doing more finer work. The next tool you've probably never seen before is this, I think, pretty new Skil drill / driver. And what makes this very unique is this pivot mechanism where you can operate both a drill bit and a driver bit in tandem. So you don't have to be swapping bits constantly if you only have one drill. And this has a bunch of cool little features that you should know about. First, what you get in the package is the drill itself. You also get a drill bit and a driver bit set. And then you get the charger and the battery. And what I like about this is even if you have other battery platforms that you're in, this doesn't have a big giant charger. It's literally just almost like an iPhone charger where it has the little brick and then it has the USB-C cable. So you can charge this on USB-C. Right in the front, you're gonna plug that in, or if you already have Skil stuff, you could drop it in a Skil charger. Let's look at the features, then I'll show you how it works. So it does have this LED light right there if you should need that. And then it has 2 speeds, a flip switch right in there, 1 and 2. This is a 1/4 inch drive, so all of your 1/4 inch bits will work if you already have some of those. And then to flip that around, you just install it like you always do, push this button, and then this flips right round.
You spin me right round, baby, right round.
Then you can install a drill bit if you have these that have the 1/4 inch driver heads on them, which is included actually, so it's nice. On top there is a magnet close to the back so you can drop in bits, extra screws, things like that if you're clearing this up the ladder, so that's always good to have. Down inside here is where you can change the speed settings from just drill. It just turns into a D. And then over here is the screwdriver part, and you go from 1 all the way to 9. It has 9 speed settings. Now this is not an impact driver, this is a screwdriver. And where I think this will be very handy is if you do cabinets and things like that, because you don't want to over tighten those hinge screws. Stuff like that will be perfect for this. Where this is going to come in beneficial is a couple of other ways too. Number one, if you do a lot of pilot holes and then you drive the screw, you don't have to have 2 drills on hand. This is going to take the place of both of those. And it works well. It flips around fast. You can see I can drill the hole, flip it around, drive the screw. Works extremely well. Now this is an electric screwdriver, but it does have quite a bit of power if you set it on the setting number 1. It gives it more torque. Number 2 setting is a faster speed, but you have less torque. So you'll see when you step through the settings of 1 all the way through 9, it's basically like the torque settings on your drill. The lower it goes, the more it'll let it slip. It's kind of how this is working here, and I like to see that because on a number 1 setting, if you're using some very tiny screws, you don't want to strip those out, especially if you're putting in hinges and things like that, or more delicate stuff. If you're making like decorative boxes and things, you don't want to strip that out. And you're not using hand tools, you probably should, but this will let you dial in the sensitivity so that it doesn't strip those out. Number 1 setting is very sensitive, and as you step up, you'll see that it gives a little more torque with each one. And if you do need that extra torque, again, flip it down to the number 1 setting, and you can drive a screw all the way through a 2x6 into a piece of walnut, and it does a really good job. So it has plenty of power for that reason. Now, it's not an impact driver. If you need an impact driver, then you would buy one of those if you're really driving lag bolts and things like that. But for a screwdriver that also flips around and does drilling operations, this is fantastic. Now there's one place I wish they would have improved on this design. If they would allow, well, first off, you can see that only one of these is spinning at a time, so you don't have to worry about your fingers or something getting twisted up in there, which I think is a good design. However, if they would do this one thing, this would be absolutely a game changer. If you could flip this to the side and still have one of these active so that I could drive a screw at a 90-degree angle, much like this attachment, which allows you to get into those tight spaces, 90-degree turns. If this done that, it would lock in at a 90-degree, game over. This would be amazing. But even with that not being the case, I think this is an extremely innovative and very cool tool from Skil, of all people, from Skil. This is a good brand, and I've been more and more impressed with them over the last couple of years, starting with their table saw and some other things I've reviewed on the channel. Skill is back, baby. Before we get to the tape measure that could change everything about measuring, this is a Klein, and I didn't know this existed. Maybe, probably you did, but I had no idea. So I've got an older, just a T-bevel type angle finder, and I use that quite a bit. But this has a digital display, and I love it. It takes one AAA battery, which they do include, and it's from Klein, so it's well made. Everything about this feels well made, and I like that. From the rulers, they're plenty thick. They're not gonna get bent easily or anything like that, to this display and everything around it. Now you may see on some footage it looks like it's flickering. That's just a frame rate on my camera not synced up to the frame rate on how fast this digital display is refreshing. But in person, you don't see any of that flickering. It's literally just a static, very high contrast display. It looks well, it's easy to read, even in direct sunlight. I like this. So where would you use this? Well, take for instance on my miter station, I have this 19 or 20 degree angle here, and I can take this digital angle finder and set it at 90 degrees. All I'm gonna do is use a speed square, set that, and you can zero this out at any angle, but I'm gonna zero it out here. And once I got it set at 19 degree angles, there's a little twist knob on top. It does like a quarter turn from loose to tighten, and when you can tighten that up and it locks that angle in. And if for any reason you wanted to hold on that angle, just in case it gets bumped or anything, you just push the hold button and it's gonna save that angle on the screen. So if you're going from one location back to the saw and you get back over there and you've moved this or bumped this, you can still see the angle there on the display. So that'll be handy if you just need to remember what angle you're supposed to be cutting. Then I can take the angle finder, just set it on my miter station, and it's gonna find the angle. It's gonna tell me it's 19 degrees. From there, I can just set my miter saw on 19 degrees, or I can just set this on top of the miter saw and then set it at 19 degrees. Either way is gonna work. Easier just to set the degrees on your miter saw, but if for some reason you're not trusting your miter saw, you can use this to get those dead accurate angles. And that's why I love this thing. It's fantastic. I think this is one of those hidden gems that you'll just love having in the shop. So you should probably pick one up. Link in the description, pin comment for all these things. This tape measure could literally change everything about tape measures in general. Now, will it replace your good old fashioned, my absolute favorite, the fast cap old standby tape? This is one of the greatest tapes ever made. Probably not, but it will add a ton of things you can do with a tape measure. Out of the box, what you get is the tape measure itself, the digital part we'll talk about while they're separate. You get a carrying case, a charger, and the instructions, and it's very well packaged. Like, this is next level packaging. It just makes it feel like a premium product because you paid a premium price. I'm glad they did the extra mile here with the packaging. Now to charge it up, it's USB-C, so you shouldn't have any issues charging this anywhere, and the battery life lasts a long time. I've been using this for hours, so usually like 6 or 8 hours yesterday just playing with it in the shop, and now to this morning I'm still using it for another 40 minutes, and it's still doing really well. This thing is absolutely amazing. First and foremost, you can use it as a standard tape measure, and it's a high quality, really easy to read tape measure, and it does come in metric for those who love metrics as much as a lot of you do, and you let me know in the comments. But we here in America, we use imperial or standard measurements. So that's what we're using. That's what I bought, but you can buy that. Now, one thing I love about this tape measure is that it is modular. And what that means is you can take them apart. The digital part comes off. So if you break for any reason, maybe something falls on this tape measure or you drop it and it breaks for whatever reason, it's a tape measure. So you know how tape measures are. If it breaks, you can replace this part and not have to replace the digital part. I think they made a great choice by making these separate. And they go together very easily and it snaps into place. It is well made. It feels really well in the hand and it's not overly bulky. You would think something like this would be heavy. It's not. It does include a belt clip that you can easily hook on a pocket or a belt. But the star of the show is going to be the display and everything that you can do with this tape measure other than simple measuring. Now this tape measure has controls on top and on the sides, and I'm fixing to show you what they all do. Well, on the side here is memory, so if you have, for one, anytime you hit the enter key on a measurement, it will save that measurement, and it'll also send it to the app if you have the app installed on your phone. The app will save like 300 measurements, and you can rename them and things, so you can keep up with what his measurements goes with what. But on this device, I think it's 20 or 30 that it'll save that you can cycle through. And you'll see, yep, 30, 1 out of 30, and then you can cycle through those. And it keeps up with both regular measurements as well as the laser measurements depending on what you're measuring. We'll talk about the laser measurements in a minute. If at any time you want to go back to the home screen, just tap the power button and it goes back. And speaking of the power button, it powers off by itself after a minute or so, and then just powering it back on, it only takes about 3 or 4 seconds for it to be ready to use, maybe not even that long. So I like that it doesn't have a long boot up time. This is a 2-inch OLED screen, so it's very easy to read, very high contrast, and you can change the display in multiple ways. This is a settings button. It'll get you into the settings menu, and you can see there, this plus button will cycle you through all of the settings, so you can just go through and figure out what you want. And we'll go into the display first. Anytime you want to go into something, you just hit the enter key, and then you can see we can choose from 6 different display modes. We can do the tape measure like you just saw, but one of my favorites is this one where we have the measurements on screen, and anytime I hit that button, it will save the measurement, it will save the measurement, it will save the measurement. So if I'm taking multiple measurements here, I can keep them all right on the screen, up to 3 at a time. Actually more than that, because every time you hit it, it'll just put a new one in there, but they're all in the memory, remember? If at any point you're ready to clear those out, you simply just hit the power button and it erases them one at a time. I'm glad they did that so that you don't erase all of them, because if I make a measurement and I save it, and then I save it, and then I save, well, I messed up. I don't erase all my measurements, I just erase the last one. So that's awesome. And there's 4 other display modes that you can see here that you can use, depends on what you prefer. You can also change the units here. You can do meters, feet, inches, feet and inches, millimeters and centimeters. So just depend on what you're used to measuring in or what you like measuring in, you can pick anything you want here. That 2 blue line just means it's connected to the app, and it's very easy to connect. The instructions are very well laid out, so it's very easy for you to check the manual and shows you how to get the app and everything. Speaker icon just turns on key beeps, and there's another function that I use it in, which we'll talk about, but mostly I leave that off. You can also flip the display, so if you don't want to look at it in that orientation, it can be flipped upside down so that you can read it from either direction. There's also 2 color themes here, depending on which one you prefer. The laser that's going left and right here, this is where you're going to take your measurement from, or where the device is taking the measurement from. You can change that from the center of the line, the front of the line, or the rear of the line, because the line is maybe a 30-second thick. So it just depends on what you prefer. I like it on the back. You can also use the offset, so if for some reason it's out of calibration, you can calibrate it here, and we're talking down to the thousandth of an inch, but if you use millimeters, you can do like less than millimeters. You can just really get really fine detail with it. Mine was calibrated perfectly out of the box. I checked it on a 4-foot board that I knew was exactly 4 foot, used it, perfect. It lined up perfect, so I didn't have anything to do here, but you can adjust that if you need to. One thing to note is that button changes where the measurement's going to be taken from. It'll cycle from the front of the device to the back to the middle. So you get that laser line that's going perpendicular there, or it's just going to go from back to front. Where that's important is if you're measuring something and you butt it against the wall, you want it to measure from the back of this device and not the front, or it's going to throw it off, right? So that's where you can set that up. It just depends on where you want this to measure from. There is an enter key on the right and on the top, so depending on how you're holding it, you can always access where you can save your measurements and things like that. When you're on the measuring screen, if you start tapping this button with the 4 dots, then you start cycling through all of the functions that this has, and it has a bunch, and you'll be using a bunch of these if you buy this. Now, it does angles in different ways. We also has a stakeout function, which allows you to, what I'm assuming, I didn't use this part, but I'm assuming like if you're laying out a deck or something like that, it will tell you exactly where you could put your posts and things like that, depending on what you've inputted into the tape measure. You can also do point to point, indirect height, indirect length, which we'll talk about, volume, area, which is amazing, continuous measuring, and single length, as well as line split. Now, continuous measurement is what you think it is. You point it at something, it's using the laser. If you move away from it, it continuously moves the measurement or keeps track of that measurement. If you move forward, then it will take away from that measurement. It's real-time measuring using the laser, which is really handy to have. Now, the single length measurement is what when you power it up, that's what it's going to be in every time, and that's what I use most often. It's like when you just taking a measurement on a board or taking a measurement on the wall or anything like that, that's what they're talking about. And it doesn't matter what display is on there, you can still save those 3 in a row, but that's the single measurement. You can also use that with the laser. I did this on a 4-foot board, and you just line it up with the edge of the board, put something down there to block it, hit the laser, it tells you exactly how long that is. It's pretty cool. And it's dead accurate, down to the 30 seconds, even with the laser, so that's pretty cool. The screen is so easy to read, especially if you're getting older like me and you need to just be able to see your measurements. That screen's gonna be absolutely huge for you because it's very high contrast. It's extremely easy to see exactly where that laser's lining up. Now there is a tiny bit of learning curve here on operating this and figuring out all the settings. It took me about 30 minutes just sit down playing with it, so it's not huge. And I'm not the smartest guy in the room, so if I can do it, you can do it. And when you measure things, looking exactly where that laser is, if you're trying to measure exactly on that laser, is a little bit more nuanced than just looking at the mark and making the mark, right? But you'll get used to it and you figure out which side of the line you're measuring to because you can do that in the settings, the front, the middle, or the back. I don't know, I can't not say enough about this. I'm impressed. Should I order the Recon version and see if theirs stacks up? Now, one of my favorite functions of this tape measure is line split. And what line split does is you can use that to segment boards or anything really. So if I have a board that I'm going to lay out for, say, a panel glue up and I want to put my dominoes at a certain length apart, or dowels or anything like that. You just go into line split mode, it's going to ask you how many segments. The plus sign or the 0 sign will cycle through those. So if I want 5 segments on this board, I'm going to hit 5 and then it's going to go into mode. From there, I'm just going to use the measuring tape just like I normally would. Take my measurement. This is 3'3", and I've got it sitting on the back side of that board. We're going to hit enter. And then it automatically calculates everywhere you're going to need to put a segment or a mark or a dowel or whatever you're doing. If you're building a dog kennel and you want so many bars per feet or whatever, it'll segment those out every single time for you. You don't have to do anything. This is where this is so awesome. Or if you're doing handrails and you're putting risers every so often, like there's tons, like millions of different ways you could use this, and I absolutely love it. All right, this is where I like to turn the key bead back on because it will give you an audible signal every time you're getting close to that segment. Check this out. So you can see it says 5 of 5. We're in the 5th segment because we're all the way down. When you start moving it back, it shows you a left arrow to the 4th segment. When you hear the beep, you know you're close. There's a red arrow on screen. That will tell you exactly where to put your mark. When you line up your laser on that, then you can take your handy dandy pencil, make a mark on that laser. That's where the 1st or the 4th segment, in this case, is. Move it down. It's literally that easy. I love that. You don't have to do any math, any calculations. This does it for you. And speaking of math, my next favorite feature of this tape measure. If you're like me, or even if you're not like me and you don't like doing math, and especially, I know metric people, I know, but fractions sometimes are confusing and it's hard to keep up with everything and add in real time what you need to add up. But on this tape measure, it does it for you. All you have to do is push that plus button until you see a symbol. This is subtraction, this is addition. So you just tap it, and now, as I move out, if I do 11 7/8 and I push the enter key, it puts that on there. We need to add 1 foot 8 inches and 3/8. Ba-bam. 2 foot 8 inches and 1/4. It automatically adds that for you. And if you wanted to keep going and add more to that measurement, it'll do that as well. It'll just keep doing it as many times as you want. It's going to do all the math for you. I absolutely love that. And if you wanted to take off measurements, you're just going to push and hold the plus sign, and it's going to subtract those measurements. Super cool. There's a couple of angle features here I really like. Now, first and foremost, you can use this just like a line level, like you've seen in any other line level tool that you got. It will mount to a tripod. That's what that hole or screw hole on the back is for. You can set this up, and then you can hang cabinets or whatever you want, pictures, anything you want in your house. You need that line level on the wall. This is going to do it. That's why I like that. It's a cool feature. And you can also tilt this to any degree you want if you need to do that as well. It also has what they call included angle. And that is when you have this setting on the surface, it'll calibrate. It takes about 6 or 7 seconds. And then from there, once it's calibrated, when you tilt this, it will calculate the angle on a flat surface like this. Where you may mess up though is if you move the back of this the same, if it doesn't keep the same pivot point, then it may throw it off. So you would need a way to anchor that so that it doesn't. It's not something I would use often, but it's cool that it's in there, I guess. Now we also have point-to-point measuring, and all that is a laser measuring. So if I wanted to measure the wall behind you, I'm just gonna go into the point-to-point measurement. I don't know if you can see it. Chris, zoom in. Say hi, Chris. We might can see it right there, but in the naked eye, it's very easy to see. Right above this YouTube sign where you should subscribe so that number goes up. But all you do with the point-to-point is you're gonna point it at a point, doesn't matter where, and push the button.
You push the button, Max.
And then you're gonna move it to the other point that you want to measure to and push the button again, and it's gonna give you the reading. In my case, it's showing 18 feet, 8 inches. One key thing is if you don't have this on the tripod, you need to basically stand at the exact same spot, push the button and move it. Try not to move it left or right or it's gonna skew it off. But if you're just doing quick and dirty measurements, maybe you're trying to get measurements of a wall or a floor or something like that, this is gonna come in handy. We also have indirect height. So if I was measuring the height of the green door here, pointed at the bottom, again, keep it positioned about the same place, move it to the top. It's 6 foot 8 inches. I measure with my tape measure just to check, it's 6 foot 8 inches. So this indirect height works well if you're just trying to get the height of something. Indirect length is very cool because if I was measuring here in the floor and I needed to measure to the garage door, but there was a piece of equipment in the way or tree or whatever, all you gotta do is tilt it up, it'll go up and over it and you still get that measurement. It's pretty cool to have. But again, when you tilt it up, it does move away from the bottom of this, so it may skew it just a little bit, but it's kind of cool to have. Volume feature, if you need to get the volume of anything for whatever reason you're doing that, you tell me why you would do that, but maybe you're doing epoxy river tables and you want to get the volume that you're going to need to pour in there. You measure the length, the width, and the depth. This is going to calculate the volume for you, so that's going to make your life easier. If I need to get the volume of this cabinet back here, you can use either the standard tape measure or the laser to do this. Doesn't matter. Every time you measure length, hit the button, measure height, hit the button, measure width, hit the button, or any combination of the three, and then it's going to calculate that volume exactly, which is pretty cool. And then of course you got area as well, so if I needed to know the square foot of this room, I could calculate that extremely easy. Typically you're going to use the laser for this because this tape measure is only 12 foot long, which is perfect for the shop in my opinion, but the laser goes up to 330 feet, so if you need a 330 foot by 330 foot shop, congratulations, you've won. But you can put this against the wall on one side, shoot the laser to the other, shoot the laser on the opposite wall, ba-bam, you've got the area, square footage figured out. Or if you need to figure out how much paint you're gonna need for the wall, stuff like that, this is where that's gonna come in handy, just a quick and dirty calculation, very easily. What's crazy is I haven't even scratched the surface of everything this tape measure can do. It's a pretty good tape too. We're looking at 86, 90 something inches of full extension there. I like that I can extend it out and it stays unless I push the bottom button, which retracts it. It's just amazing. It really is. It's a cool invention. This is probably one of the coolest tools that I have seen in recent memory as far as how advanced it is and how much is packed into such a small package. It's just impressive and it works extremely well and it's well made. I've just been impressed, very impressed with this. Now, here's the catch. It costs a lot. This thing is $300 at the time of this filming if you pre-order. Pre-order takes about 4 to 6 weeks, so if you want one, you better go ahead and order. I ordered mine about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it just come in a few days ago. The reason being is they're making these in batches as they get the pre-orders, but you also get to save $100 if you're a little bit patient. If you want to wait for them to have them in stock all the time, you're probably going to pay the full price at $399. Right now, you can get them for $299. So, now, will everybody go out and buy this? So does everybody need this? Of course not. Of course not. It's a $300 tape measure. But if you need it for those functions that you've seen, or you just want to have it on hand because sometimes you run into stuff and it's cool to have stuff on hand if you have the budget, this might be a great option for you. Otherwise, just get this fast cap, old standby, 16-foot tape, greatest tape measure ever made, in my opinion, and it's only about less than $10. So, but if you do want this and save $100, link in the description, pin comment. The next tool you've probably never seen before, unless you watch this channel, and if you don't, you should subscribe, please. Check this out. This is a box, but it's not just any box. It is a box to store sandpaper. That's not what they meant it for, but that's what I use it for, and it works absolutely amazing, no matter if it's 5-inch or 6-inch paper or accessories for sanding, such as sanding mice, extra sanding pads, and a whole host of other stuff you can put in this box. These dividers are removable, and this box only costs about $35. If they try to charge more than that, then do not buy it because they've raised the price for whatever reason. Now, I have all kinds of paper in here, including 3-inch sandpaper, 5-inch, 6-inch, and of course those accessories, all kinds of stuff, and it closes up so these don't spill out, and you can throw it on a shelf, and it holds a ton of sandpaper. Probably one of my favorite organizational pieces I bought that didn't break the bank. If you wanted to get froggy, you could even take a label maker and mark, put a label sticker on there, whatever grits are in each bin. I just keep mine sorted from low grit to high grit, so it just depends on how you wanted to do it. But this has come in very handy, and it lets me know at a glance how much sandpaper I have left and if I need to order more. I'm going to show you 10 ways to upgrade your shop to make it safer, more efficient, and all around more enjoyable to be in. One thing to note, these upgrades aren't meant to do all at one time. This is something you kind of plan for and do over a period of time, which is what I have done over the last 7.5 years. It's taken a while, but we slowly get there. Number one on the list is lumber storage. Now, it took me a while to add this to my shop, but I wish I had done it much sooner, because now that it's up off the floor and out of the way, it just frees up a lot more floor space, and it keeps everything nice and organized. Now, I'm using these from Bora. They're called Bora wood racks. I'll link to everything in the pinned comment and the description to help you find these easier, but they are very easy to install. Literally just find a couple of studs and drill into them. They hold like a few hundred pounds, 300 pounds, something like that. I thought at first when I put these up there, I was quite nervous that they weren't going to be able to hold the weight, because I do have one of them stacked full of hardwoods, but they've been up there for over a year now and not a single issue. They hold all of this lumber. They hold a bunch more than what you would think. Another concern I had about these were, because it only has 2 posts, I thought that the lumber would sway or bend or bow or twist. That's not been the case. They've been flat and kept everything nice and flat. I think these are some of the best value lumber racks you could buy. If you don't want to buy these, you can certainly build your own or build your own lumber cart, etc. It just depends on how much space you have and how you prefer to store your lumber. The number 2 upgrade I recommend everyone make is lighting. Now, lighting makes a huge difference when you're able to see your projects, your cut lines, where you're marking. It makes a massive difference in the shop. If you're working in a garage and it's usually have 1 or 2 regular light bulbs up there, when you upgrade the lighting, it'll be literally like night and day. These ones that I have in here are called Barinas, I think. I've had these for a few years now, and they daisy chain together. There's 10 of them. You put 5 on one circuit, 5 on the other circuit. In other words, 5 on one plug-in, 5 on the other. And then you just hook them together, and when you power one on, all of them come on, or at least 5 of them come on. And it really does brighten the shop up massively over what a regular light bulb will do. This will make a giant difference in your shop, and it won't break the bank. I think 10 of these cost about $200, maybe a little less, where you can get 5 of them for about half of that. So just a small investment will make a big difference in your shop. So this is what it's like when I don't have those lights on, but when I do turn them on, you can see a massive difference night and day. Shop lights on. Pretty big difference, huh? The number 3 upgrade I suggest you make is, if it can be mobile, make it mobile. One of the first things I built for my shop was a mobile tool cart for my planer to be able to move it around. Later, I built a new cart to hold my planer and my jointer, as well as several other tools, and it is also mobile, so you can move it around wherever you need it. That makes a big difference in small shops, because you can move things out of the way or outside or out in the middle of the floor or anywhere you need to actually get the work done, and then you can store it out of the way when you're done. Also, mobile bases for other tools like bandsaws. I bought a WEN one first. I don't really recommend that one. It kind of failed on me, but I did wind up upgrading to a Grizzly brand, and it works very well. Make sure you get a good quality, read those reviews on those mobile carts that fit your bigger tools, because that will make a difference. But being able to move that in and out of the way has been huge. I can have a good sized bandsaw in the shop, but it doesn't take up a bunch of floor space, and if it's in the way, literally just roll it out of the way. And also the SawStop big old table saw is also on a mobile cart, so that I can move that around the shop, because there's only about 3.5 feet between the garage door and the saw. So a lot of times I'll move it around over there on the other side of the workbench and use that to saw wood and etc. Use this as my outfeed table and still have enough room behind me that I can cut large sheet goods, etc. with the garage door closed. I also have this rolling 5-drawer mobile workstation that I bought from Milwaukee Packout. You just move this around the shop. I like having that around when I'm building or working on something. I can just move that cart where I need it, but it's on wheels as well. If it can be on wheels, put it on wheels. Speaking of tools, another upgrade I suggest you make is tool upgrades, and not buying new tools to replace your old tools, but replacing the stock blades that come on your tools. You'll see a big difference in a lot of different tools. Even the saw stop come with a very cheap blade on it. I like CMT orange chrome, especially for my table saw. That's what I run most of the time, a 52 combination blade. I like that style blade, just gets a lot done. And they're not overly expensive. They are a little more pricey, but you do get what you pay for there. They're one of my favorite blades for that saw. But I also like the Diablo line of blades because they're a very good value and you get a lot out of them. I used them for years on my miter saw as well as my table saw. Never had any issues with them. They stay sharp a decent amount of time. I do think the CMTs last quite a bit longer. That's why I tend to gravitate toward those. But if you're on a budget, definitely look at those Diablo line. Now, if you just want the top tier blades, buy once, cry once type things, look at Ridge Carbide or even the Forest line of blades. Although I'm more of a fan of the Ridge Carbide than I am the Forest, but that's probably personal preference. Also think about your router bits. If you're using the more budget line, say like Skill, etc., they're really not meant for a lot of production work. They'll get by for a few projects, but once you start making a lot of stuff, you want to look at more higher end bits. I like the Whiteside brand. There's a 4-piece set that I really recommend for beginners. It has the chamfer, it has a round over, and then 2 flush trim bits, one with a top bearing, one with a bottom. I think that's a really good starter set for under $100, and these things last a very long time, just using them under normal conditions. Another good tool upgrade you could make is the miter gauge that comes with most table saws. I know RYOBI comes with a really good one, but other than that, the saw stop doesn't really come with a great one. I like the Incra line. It will fit in standard T-slots on most all table saws, even the DeWALT job site style saw. The Incra V27 is the model number. It's under $100. It's a very nice miter gauge, very accurate. So if you want to look at one of those, it's a good upgrade to make. Another upgrade suggestion is tool organization and storage, and there's a bunch of ways to do this. You can make your own or you can buy it. There's, I guess, 2 ways to do it. But there's a bunch of different options here to store and keep your tools organized, and that's where the efficiency comes in. Because if you always know where to grab your tools, where they're located, you'll be able to work faster. And I know a lot of people are on time crunches. They're trying to balance their family life with their work life, with their side woodworking business, and time really is of the essence. So looking for a tool for 20 minutes wastes so much time. If you know where it's at, makes your life much easier. Here's what I'm using. I love this clamp storage. This is from Rockler. You can hold different styles. In other words, you buy the different ones, either pipe clamps, parallel clamps, or F-style clamps. You can also build your own. I've built some that I put right here on the end of the workstation and really just cut those out of a CNC, but you can do it with a jigsaw or anything else like that. Just making clamp racks makes your life easier because you know where your clamps are, you can access them, and then you can store them out of the way because you know if you start collecting a bunch of clamps, those things start piling up and they really do get in the way. Another good option is to add a tool wall to your shop. A lot of people love French cleats. Those work extremely well. Then you can build any size piece that you need to hold the tools or the parts and pieces that you need. I went with OmniWall. We partnered on a video. There's a whole video on how to install this stuff. I really like this set. There is places for your drills. There's shelves for your batteries and chargers, and just a whole basically organization system that you can put into your shop, including socket holders and all kinds of stuff. But it is a little pricey, so I'll steer a lot of people away from this. So if you want to build your own, it's a good option to do that and get your tools up where you can see them. They're easy to access. Another option for storage are toolboxes you can buy at the big box stores. I bought this at Home Depot. This is called a Husky. There's a video on me assembling this. This is a Husky hutch, and it comes with one side cabinet, and I purchased another side cabinet to match. And this is what I'm doing with mine. In one side, I've got paints and glues all stored in there. Yep, that's a pretty good way to store those. On the other side, I have my cordless tools stored on the top, and then down on the bottom, I have lumber storage, scrap wood down there. Now the drawers is really where I'm able to stay organized, and this was kind of my goal of like 2021 is to get organized. Now I'm using these little small boxes are on Amazon. I'll link to those. They are very inexpensive, and they're perfect for holding small parts and odds and ends. You get like 32 boxes for like, I don't know, not a lot of money, less than $30, right around $30. This really helps you stay organized. My set of Tecton wrenches here came with these organizers, and that's really handy to keep those all in one spot. The little small parts organizers are also perfect for tools or even loose sockets, whatever you got to store, wrenches, pliers, anything. But I'm not without my junk drawers. I have a few down here that just collect random stuff, so just be cautious about stuffing too much in drawers. I'm guilty of that myself. Next on the list, small parts organization. As you start woodworking and building your shop, you'll start gathering up screws, bolts, nuts, etc. And these things can really get jumbled up. So having a way to keep those separated is a really good option. I showed some really nice, affordable boxes just like a couple of weeks ago on the channel. These are from Tay Tools. You can get like a set of 4, very inexpensive. These are excellent little storage boxes for the price. You can also pick up stuff like this Milwaukee one, not pack out. This one's much less expensive than the pack out or rigid. Most everybody, tool brands, making these small parts organizers. You can pick these up anywhere. I'll link to my favorites in the description below. This is a great way to keep everything nice and organized. This will really speed up your process when you know exactly where that 1¼ pocket hole screw is versus that 3-inch regular wood screw is. It really helps keeping all that stuff organized. It helps you work much faster. Then of course you could use pack out or whatever tool brand you like that has those organizers to keep your bits, tools, everything else like that stored. I like my pack out, but you do you. And speaking of small parts organization, don't sleep on magnetic trays. You can get these about anywhere. I've got some linked down below to Amazon. You can get these at Harbor Freight, etc. But they're really great to hold bits and parts and pieces and screws. These things are really handy to have. Another upgrade I really encourage people to do when they can is flooring. Now, a lot of people have like epoxy floors in their garage. Well, some people. Most of us have concrete, which is what I have. And standing on that for hours on end really does bother my back, my legs, my feet. And so one thing that I did early on was I started buying what they call horse stall mats. You can buy them at any farm store, like Tractor Supply, or if you got a local farm store, ask about horse stall mats. These usually come in 4-foot by 6-foot pieces, and they're about 3/4 of an inch thick. These things are heavy and they're really hard to move around. But once you get them in place, they typically stay there. Now what that did was it really did relieve a lot of stress. These are very hard rubber mats, so you can still roll your tools around without any issues. But it doesn't hurt your back and legs like concrete does. And it does absorb a little bit of sound, so it's not as loud, and it also absorbs things that fall off the workbench onto like your tools when they fall off. So it doesn't hit hard concrete, it's hitting that rubber mat. So it does make quite a bit of difference in a shop. Now these are a little pricey at about $40-ish a piece, and what I did was bought 2, and then like a few weeks later I bought 2 more. Then my kids got me some for Father's Day one year, and so I just added them over time until I could get the whole shop, whole garage floor covered with them. So it did take a little bit of time, but if you have the money to invest in something like that, it's a good option. Next on the list, one of the best upgrades I've made, especially because I'm in South Arkansas and the humidity is so high here, like we're talking 80, 90, 100% humidity most of the summer. A dehumidifier. Now these are a little more pricey too, depending on what model you get, but I have run one of these in this shop since like 2019-ish, and it has made a massive difference. Even though I do have a mini split now, before I had the mini split, the dehumidifier runs all the time. I have a hose that goes under the garage door and out to the side of the house and drains so that I don't have to empty the tank, because I tried emptying the tank and I was doing it like 2 times, 3 times a day. These things make a massive difference in the way the temperature feels, even if you don't have climate control. So if it's 95 degrees outside, you have the dehumidifier on, humidity outside's 90%, inside is 35%, it makes a massive difference, And another benefit is your tools don't rust as fast or at all. I've had 0 issues with rust since I put in the dehumidifier, and that was well before I got the mini split. Even my gym equipment, a lot of it's bare steel stuff. It doesn't rust. A lot of people have rust issues with this stuff. Cast iron tops on your table saw, on your jointers, etc. This dehumidifier will solve most of that. Another upgrade I encourage a lot of people to make if you're in a garage is insulating the garage door. I thought this was going to be expensive, and I thought it was going to be a pain in the rear, but literally all this is is like a piece of 1-inch foam, hard foam board that you can buy at any home store. They just cut to fit in between these panels. This makes a really big difference. That's the east side of the house, so in the mornings the sun rises and shines right on this garage door until about noon or a little after. And so this door heats up big time in the summer. This has made a big difference. And in the winter, actually, it's made a lot of big difference too, because this metal gets so cold. This really does help a lot too. This is one of the least expensive upgrades you can do to your shop that does make quite a bit of difference. And they also make kits for garage doors too that you can purchase. If you want to do one of the kits, it probably looks a little cleaner, a little better, but this board works well too. And I always get this question, how do you hang your track saw tracks on a garage door? These are called track racks that I got on Amazon. I'll link to those as well. You can also use these on the wall or garage door or anything like that. They work really well to keep your tracks up out of the way. If you want to stick around after number 10, I got a couple of bonus picks for you that will really help upgrade your shop. Number 10 on the list is an extra work table that you can put away. Now, I recently done a video on this topic. These are really handy for extra finishing tables and just extra workspace when you run out of or you have a project on your normal workbench. Having an extra workbench in the shop. Now, how do you have an extra workbench if you have one that's already taken up a bunch of space? Well, it needs to be storable. In other words, you need to be able to fold it up and get it out of the way. Then you pull it out only when you need it. So if you're having to finish extra product, or you just need a place to put things while you're working on another project, these are excellent options for you. I like the Boris Centipede, it's probably my pick for most people because it takes up very minimal space and you can literally just buy the base and then use a piece of plywood, but the top is very nice, gives you some clamping options, etc. And then there's also the RYOBI Speed Bench as well as the Festool MFT table. You can build your own. I built one that you can fold and unfold up. There's a whole video on that I'll link to in the description. Plans for that. You can buy one of these or build one of these, but these are so handy to have. I use them all the time in the shop, especially when I'm finishing or letting things dry. So if I give something a mineral oil bath, that's where I use these the most. Next on the list is dust collection, and this is a big deal for a lot of people because dust collection can be pricey, but there's ways to work your way up to that. One way I did it was, when I first started, all I had was a rigid shop vac. Use what you got, right? And so I used that for quite a long time. Now, a shop vac fills up quite fast if you're using table saws, etc. But there's good ways around that. That's to use a dust separator. I bought this Dust Right separator. It works really well. I've used it with a CNC. I've used it with the table saw, even the planer, etc. It really does help filter out the big chunks before they go to your shop vac, so it doesn't fill your vac up and stop your filters up, etc. as fast. These are really good options if you're on a budget or you're just starting out. The next dust collection thing I think most people should get is a dust extractor. Now, there's a bunch of different brands out there that make these. DeWALT makes one. I've had one for years, used it for a while. Festool makes one. I like the Festool. That's what I use. But there's other brands out there, Bosch, Fiend. You just make your pick. Just make sure it has a HEPA filter in there. That's what you're looking for. And also your shop vac should also have a HEPA filter if it is available. And then last but not least, if you're on the way to upgrading, there's a lot of dust collectors out there. A lot of brands make dust collectors. Harbor Freight, I hear a bunch of good things about the Harbor Freight dust collector. I've never used it. I just get a lot of feedback from people. I have the Laguna P-Flux one. You can look at Harvey, and if I was doing things over, I would probably really look at Oneida. I have nothing invested in them, get nothing out of it. I think they have one of the better systems for garage woodworkers that I've seen. That may be something I'll upgrade to at some point. And then if budget allows, there are dust filtration systems. I have the Laguna Clean Air. This thing is massively important. Anytime I'm running saws or CNCs, I'll turn this on and it'll filter down to like 0.1 microns. It really makes a huge difference on the fine dust. WEN makes one of these, Jet, DeWALT. Like, you can find one of these dust filtration systems most anywhere that you buy your tools. They are really nice. A lot of people hang them on the ceiling so it circulates the air. I've got mine sitting on the toolbox. Wherever you want to put it, just make sure it's a little bit elevated. Those things work. Now for the bonus picks, this isn't for everyone because not everyone, A, wants them, and 2, has the budget or even wants to spend their money on something like this, but they are extremely cool. You should check these out and see what they can do. One is a mini split or climate control. If you can budget this into your shop, eventually, it doesn't have to be immediately, but it's kind of like I had a goal of getting one day. When I finally was able to buy one, it has made a massive difference in just being able to be comfortable in the shop while you're working, no matter if it's cold outside or hot outside. They really are nice to have. I went with the Mr. Cool, like a 24,000 BTU. My wife and I installed this ourselves, and then I hired an electrician just to wire it up. But they're very easy to install. Most anybody can do it. They're awesome. 2A, if you can budget one of these, you'll have endless fun with these and be able to basically make anything you want, to store anything you want. It is a 3D printer. I went with the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon. I purchased this one about 6 or 8 months ago. They have a less expensive model that's like a couple $100s, all the way up to this model. So you can really, depends on your budget or how much you want to invest in one of these. But I have been able to make some of the coolest storage and organization products with this. That's why I bought it, is because I was trying to get everything organized, especially for like custom parts, like pack out inserts to store tools or bits, or even parts and piece organizers. The options are endless. There's tons of files out there on the internet that you can purchase or download for free. I'll link to some of my favorite ones in the description where I get a lot of these files at. I don't design these things. I did design one. I designed a CA glue holder that holds all of my CA glue. That file's available if you want to download it on my website. These things are so fun to have in the shop. There's only one other tool that I've had more fun with than this, and that would be 2B. 2B is a CNC. Now, a lot of people aren't interested in CNCs, but a lot of people are. I got the Shapeoko 5 Pro 4x2. I think it's the best CNC for small shops. In other words, space saving. It's only taking up like 3 foot by 5 foot-ish amount of room. This thing has been absolutely amazing. I have created some of the coolest stuff with this thing, including organizational stuff, but also money producing things. I've been able to sell quite a bit of product off of this machine, and that's where these things really shine. I think they're really good for production work. If you're making trays or templates or custom work, putting custom designs and things, this is where this stuff really shines. I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of money you can make with a CNC, but even if you don't want to make money, if that's not your end goal, they're still massively fun to have to make custom products for your family, your friends, or even customers. I found an affordable alternative to woodpeckers that will compete on quality and accuracy. I've got 4 different tools to show you that compete directly with woodpeckers, and then this company also makes a couple of tools that woodpeckers doesn't even make. Stick around for those. Now, before we get started, I'll make it 100% clear. I absolutely love woodpeckers tools. I think they are phenomenal, amazing tools. I think they are top quality, but they are very expensive. I do own multiple different things from woodpeckers, as you can see here. I really do like them. However, I also know that an affordable alternative is always a good option when you're on a budget and you want good, accurate tools that won't break the bank. Probably one of the most common tools that any woodworker will own is a square. It's one that you'll use on almost every project you have, no matter what you're building. And these might be 2 of the best you can buy. Now, this is the Woodpeckers in red. This is iGaging brand in blue. These are very, very similar, but they do have a few differences depending on what you like to see in a tool. First and probably most important is accuracy. If you get a square, it needs to be square, and that's where both of these really, really do shine. And both of these have accuracy guarantees, slightly different, but extremely close. The Woodpecker square accuracy guarantee is 0.001 of an inch. So 1/1000th of an inch within square over the total length. That's extremely accurate. Now, the iGaging square is guaranteed to be square to 0.002 or 2/1000ths of an inch over every inch. So over the length of the blade, about 0.002-ish. In other words, they're square, you don't gotta worry about it. One of my favorite things about the Woodpecker square, this 1281 and the 1282, which is the stainless steel version, is the fact that you can lay these on a piece of work and they balance themselves. Like an old carpenter square, it doesn't have that shoulder, right? But these do. So when you set the tool on the project, it holds itself up so you can literally just go hands-free. Same thing with the SS. Now, I like the fact that iGaging is doing something similar here with that shoulder. They also both have a notch right there on the end of the blade so that you can mark all the way to the edge of the workpiece. That's very handy. I like this square, but it is lacking a few features. Obviously, there's marks on there where you can measure things and you can make sure everything's square, but that's kind of where that ends. Now, the iGaging goes a little bit step further with their aluminum square in the fact that there are scribe holes on there that allow you to scribe parallel lines, make marks, etc. Also, there are scribe holes where the degree marks is, and neither one of these woodpeckers have that degree layout. So if you're wanting to lay out angles on a piece of work, this will help you do that as well. One neat thing about the eye gauging is it does have a 45-degree shoulder as well, so you can easily make 45-degree angles. Neither the 1281 or the 1282 have that. It's a nice feature they added on here that I think will be quite useful for a lot of people. Now I have two sizes here of eye gauging square. There's a 7-inch and a 12-inch. They come together in a box. That's a very good value. You'll use both of these. Now one advantage the Woodpecker has over the eye gauging in my opinion is the thickness of the blade, but it can also be a disadvantage on this aluminum square. This thing is pretty beefy, if you know what I mean. It's pretty thick with 2 C's. The eye gauging blades are much thinner than the Woodpeckers, and there's a pro and a con to this, right? It is very similar in size or thickness to the stainless steel Woodpecker squares. The pro is these markings are much, much closer to your work, so you don't get a parallax effect there. In other words, your markings will be more accurate, in my opinion. Where the thick aluminum blade, the con is it's sticking up further off of the work, so there's more of a chance you'll have inaccuracies in your markings. However, this is thicker, so it is more durable in case you drop it, etc. So that's a couple things to consider on each of these. Both of these have an end scale on them on the very end scale, on the end to help you set up bit heights, blade heights, etc. That's very handy. And both of these have magnets in the bottom of them that will stick to metal, so like a cast iron top on your table saw where you're setting the blade height, etc. The 1281 is lacking the end scale, and of course there's no magnets under there, so you're basically just getting a square with a scale on it. Now if you wanted to step up to get that scribing lines or holes to be able to scribe, as well as the end scale, no magnets though, you'll have to step up to the 1282 stainless steel, which is quite a big price jump. And speaking of price, this is where eye gauging really does come into play. So if you want the aluminum Woodpeckers, it's going to be $129.99 at regular price. The stainless version Woodpeckers is $149.99 if you just get the single, or if you want the double pack, which is what I have here, then it's going to be $239.99 for the 2. If you're looking at the eye gauging squares, you get the 7 and the 12-inch square, so 2 of the squares with all of the features that are basically in the stainless but in the aluminum version, then you're looking at about $99.99 at regular price. Now most Woodpecker squares come in a nice MDF type case that you can keep them in, either in a drawer, hang them on the wall, etc. The eye gauging come in a nice protective plastic box, so they both have protective housings so you don't damage them in storage. I usually just leave mine laying in the drawer. One thing I did find interesting about the Woodpecker square, the 1281, I've never noticed this, maybe it's been on there forever, but all of my other Woodpecker's tools simply say made in the USA. But the Woodpecker's 1281 says made in the USA of domestic and German materials. So they are importing some materials from Germany apparently to make these products, or at least the 1281. Now another cool feature on these layout squares you'll notice is the blade is offset from center, and that's on purpose. Now what that's for is helping you find the center of, say, a 3/4 inch piece of stock, like you see here. Also, you can lay out mortise and tenon with the shorter offset side if you choose to do that. And on both these squares, you'll notice a 0 right in the middle. What that's for is a center finder, so if you need to find the center of a board, you're just gonna put that 0 close to the center, and then you're gonna look out here to the outer edges, and once both of these line up, you'll have center of the board. Now, number 2 is probably one of my favorite style of squares in the shop, and that's these small squares. I've used these for a long time. This is what I pick up most often with the type of woodworking I'm doing. Now I love the Woodpecker's Delve square. Fantastic, has a ton of features. This is also great. This is an eye gauging bench square. They have a couple of sizes here. Of course, the Delve square comes in a larger size as well, but you can get these in a 2-pack with the eye gauging for the bench squares. The Delve square comes in a 6-inch and a 3.5-inch version, where the eye gauging bench squares come in a 3 and a 6-inch version, although they're both the same height at 3.5 inches, so I don't know why they call it a 3-inch. Now both the eye gauging and the Delve square have an offset blade, again similar to these layout squares you saw, and this allows you to quickly find center on a 3/4 inch stock, or again lay out those mortise and tenon. You can do that with both of these squares. Both of these squares also have angle marks up the long side of the triangle. A lot of people call these triangles, not squares. In America, we call them squares. And then all you got to do is literally tilt this or pivot it wherever you want it and get that angle degree on the Delve square. It's just like any other speed style square. You do it like that. Now the eye gauging has a pretty neat little feature kind of tucked in there. On the very end, you'll notice the silver knob. What that is actually a pin. You can unscrew that pin, and it's good that it screws in and it's not friction fit, so you're not gonna lose it. Unscrew that and then drop it in any of these already predetermined holes, 22.5, 30, 45, 60, and 67.5. What that's going to allow you to do is quickly draw those angles and have a reference so you can repeat that over and over without trying to hold it steady. It's genius. I like it. Now, both of these squares also have scribe holes. The Dell square is every 1/8 of an inch, whereas the iGaging has them every 1/16 of an inch. So a little more finer detail on the scribing lines on this one. Now the Dell square has a couple of other neat little features built in. The little hole that you see right there is actually center of a 3/4 inch board. In other words, face frame, so you can basically drill for hinges and things like that with a countersink bit. That's basically a self-centering hole there. The iGaging has a similar hole there, but it's a little bit bigger around. So I'm not sure if that's going to matter much, but it's there. Another nice feature on these bench squares is there's a scale up the blade or the base of the square. So if you wanted to set that upright, you could use either side for setting blade height, bit heights, anything like that. And that comes on both sizes of the iGaging bench squares. Now, as far as accuracy goes on both of these, again, they're extremely close. I don't think you'll ever notice a difference, especially in something this small as far as squareness goes. But the accuracy on the Dell square is 0.001 of an inch over a foot, but you're only at 3.5 inches. So we're talking extremely tight tolerances on the Dell square. Also on the iGaging square, we're talking 0.0015 of an inch, so very tight tolerances there as well. On the iGaging scale accuracy, that is laser engraved on there, 0.005 of an inch, nothing that you'll ever need to worry about. Also on the Dell square, 0.004 of an inch, again, very accurate in both of these. As far as pricing goes, you can get the Dell square for right around $60. You can get both of these for right around $65. You can get the Dell square with a 6 and a 3.5 inch model, but you're going to be paying around $170 for that. And again, $65 for this, almost half price, or right around half price. Number 3 on the list are basically the Dell Square SS. In other words, in stainless. iGaging has one very similar to it. I won't call it exact because there are some differences here. Both of these are kind of weighted on the bottom because of that aluminum base, so they stand up very easy. So if you're using these to set up blades and bits, these are probably better than the aluminum version in my opinion for that, just because they're better balanced. Now both of these do have the scribe holes, very similar to their aluminum counterparts. Now the stainless version of the iGaging is different than the aluminum because they didn't include those pin holes and the pin. But this does have a base that has a step down feature to it, similar to the Dell Square, but the Dell Square has several more steps. In other words, on the end you'll see 1/4 inch step, 1/2 inch step, 3/4 inch step, and 3/8. Now you can use that in various different ways for setups in the shop, depending on your needs. Now the iGaging is much different there where it doesn't have any of that listed. Now the ends are the same at 3/8 of an inch and the blade itself is 3/8 inch thick, but that's kind of where it ends because the iGaging doesn't have any of those other measurements on there. While you may think the bases are the exact same thickness, the iGaging is a little bit thinner than 3/4, so you can't use that as a 3/4 inch block to say set up a bit height or something based on feel. You'd use that end scale instead. However, the iGaging does have that end scale on the base where the Woodpeckers does not. On the stainless steel models, these are very accurate as well. They're actually the same as what the aluminum models are. We're looking at 0.001 of an inch over 12 feet on the Dell Square as far as squareness tolerances go. On the bench square, 0.0015 of an inch, exactly the same as their aluminum counterparts. And the scale accuracies are also the same at 0.004 on the Woodpeckers line and 0.005 of an inch on the iGaging. What does that mean? When you line them up, you literally see zero difference in the scale on there. They both line up to each other exactly the same, no matter if it's on the aluminum version or the stainless version. That's what I like about the iGaging line, is a lot of times you see other tool companies produce some type of more budget-friendly stuff and their scales they just won't line up. And then that creates inaccuracies, especially if you have more than one product in the shop that you're using to lay things out. So you got a square by the miter saw, then you got a square at the workbench. If you're using 2 different squares and they don't line up, could cause you some issues. The iGaging stainless version is about $41 if you get the small version. The smaller version of the Dell Square SS, you're looking at $120 just for this one. For the bigger Dell Square SS, it's $149.99, basically $150, whereas the iGaging bigger one that I don't have here is only $46. For the iGaging stainless set, you can get that for $90 and change, which is a very good value in my opinion for both the 4 and the 7 inch stainless steel bench squares, where the Dell Square SS set will cost you $239.99. So $240 versus $90, the eye gauging may be the way to go if you don't need those added features of the Woodpeckers. Number 4 on the list is combination squares. Eye gauging makes a combination square like a regular standard combination square, as well as a double square. I don't have a Woodpecker's double square, but I do have the Woodpecker's combination square. It has been one of my favorite combination squares that I've ever bought, although it costs an insane amount of money for what you're getting. Probably a more apples to apples comparison to this eye gauging square is the Starrett brand squares. If you've ever seen those, you know they are as pricey as the Woodpeckers line. They are very expensive squares. I've had this one, I bought this a very long time ago. I've had it for a long time. Now, eye gauging also makes very accurate combination squares, and that's where I think a lot of people, when they start buying combination squares from more budget brands, what you see is when you screw down or tighten down the slide, there will still be a little bit of play in there, and that causes some inaccuracies. Not so with the eye gauging that I found. These are guaranteed square at 0.004 of an inch over 6 inches. So that's very accurate for something like this, and I like the fact that they're well made. You can get either the combination square or even a combination and a double square in a pack. They're very well laid out, very nice. I do have the Starrett brand as well that I bought several years ago for like $150 for this tiny little thing. I've lost my mind about this stuff. It's nice, but over time I've kind of been disappointed with it because the blade rusted and it just didn't hold up as well as I thought it should for the price. But I think for the price of these at like $30, less than $30 for the combination square, for a very accurate, very durable, well-made combination square, I think eye gauging does some nice things there. Now, if you just want to spend money and you like really nice stuff, check out the indexable square. I love the fact that it has this blade that sticks out, which is what they call the indexable part. It sticks out there and basically rides on your board so that you can make those parallel markings, or you can literally just let it sit there and it doesn't fall off, very similar to those layout squares that have that shoulder on there. That's my favorite feature on there. It also has a little button on there, so when you're sliding it, it gives you a positive stop. I literally never use that. But the rest of the tool is very well made, and it's very accurate as well. Now, a couple of tools that eye gauging makes that I found that Woodpeckers doesn't make but are very useful in the shop. Number 1 is a caliper. If you don't have a digital caliper, this thing is really, really nice for the price. Several years ago, I purchased this Mitutoyo brand. Very expensive, like $150 just for this. While it's very nice, eye gauging makes one that is much, much cheaper, but still you get the exact same benefits of having it. So if you're needing to measure the thickness of boards or the diameter of holes or any number of reasons you need a digital caliper, especially if you have a CNC, of course you get one of these and use it. But this is a very nice alternative to the Mitutoyo brand, and there's very little difference here that I could tell, and it comes with a nice case and 2 batteries, so there's a good little value there if you need a digital caliper. You can also measure the depth of holes, the distance between 2 pieces, just so many uses, your bolt sizes, anything that you might need a digital caliper for. These things are extremely handy to have, almost as handy as a shirt pocket. You can change this from millimeters to inches depending on what you're using. This is a 0 to 6 inch model, literally over $100 cheaper than the Mitutoyo brand. Just a fantastic value. A little conversion chart on the back makes it handy. Just easy to use, well made, very nice quality tool for way less than the Mitutoyo brand if you're in the market. Next is this eye gauging digital setup gauge for the router table, for the table saw, for routers. This might be one of the better ones I've seen for the digital version. If you want extreme accuracy, this may be the way to go. You want to set up a 3/4 inch cut on your table saw. Literally, you zero it out on the table saw and then you raise it up to the 3/4. Then you tighten this thumb screw up so it locks in place. Now you can set that blade exactly where you need it. And what I like about this one is it does have steps on the blade itself. In other words, the setup blade, you can step up 1/4, 3/8, or 1/2 after you set it. So if I set this at 3/4 and I make a few 3/4 cuts and I want to go to that next step of a 1 inch cut, all I have to do is set it up where it says 1/4. That gives me that 1/4 inch raise. That gives me the 1 inch I need. It also has a magnetic base in it. It's pretty weighty on the bottom, so it does stand up on its own. These are very well made instruments if you're looking to get some really precision accuracy when you're setting your tools up. A lot of times it will come down to USA versus China, right? Where is it made? Well, eye gauging's made in China. Woodpecker's made in the USA of domestic and German materials apparently in this one. So it just depends on where you're wanting to support, but it's not always just that clear cut. Sometimes it comes down to, I'd like to have that, but I don't have the budget for it. But I do have the budget for this, and it's good quality, and it is accurate, and that's what I need in my shop, so I'm going to go with this brand. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've done that many, many times over the years. And while I do love these Woodpecker tools, and I think they're absolutely amazing, and if you can afford them, absolutely get them. You won't be disappointed. But if you're in a spot where you either can't afford them or you just don't want to spend that much money on tools, because a lot of people just don't want to spend exorbitant amount of money on tools because they're tools. They're used to get beat up and banged up and things like that, and it may be better to go with something like eye gauging for you. I think most woodworkers out there, if they wanted to pick up something to give them some good quality tools, highly accurate and very well made, I think you would not be disappointed if you picked up these two sets if it's in your budget. The bench squares and the layout squares. If you got the set, I recommend the set because you get two sizes of each, and those do come in handy. But I think most people would be very, very happy if you just picked up these two. There's also the stainless set if it has some features on there that you prefer versus the aluminum. But these 4 squares can do almost anything you need in the shop within reason. Of course, you can't measure all the way across a piece of plywood, but for general layout and squaring things up, these 4 will have you covered for years to come. These might be the best RYOBI tools released this year. Maybe DeWALT fans will sell their tools and go RYOBI. They're that good. Let's go. Before we get started, if you want to check out any of these tools, there'll be links in the description, the pinned comment, and the shop button right here on YouTube. You don't want to miss these. RYOBI did send me these tools to check out, but no money changed hands, and I don't keep any of this stuff. I give it all away. Stay tuned. I used to be a hater myself. I would walk through Home Depot's aisles and avoid the RYOBI tools like they were a plague as I walked by. But I bought some a while back, and it really changed my mind about the brand and the tools in general. And more recently, they've been coming out with some absolutely amazing stuff that we've shown on the channel previously, and it's just been impressive. Now I'm going to show you 4 amazing tools that really do change the way a lot of people are going to see RYOBI because of the high quality and the power and the usefulness of these tools. This is my favorite, but we'll talk about it in a minute. First, they come out with a brand new battery called the 18-volt lithium high performance edge batteries. And what sets these apart is the fact that they're tabless technology. The way they deliver the power from the battery to the tool makes a significant difference, especially over the older just 18-volt lithium batteries. Now, we showed the performance differences on these in a previous video showing the drills and things like that. But now we're fixing to start putting them to the real test and cutting some real material, wood, metal, that sort of thing. I even went and bought this Milwaukee 18-volt hacksaw to compare to the RYOBI to see if the performance difference was any different. The first awesome tool you should be considering is their brand new recip saw. This is a one-hand recip saw, as they call it. Now, this is 31% more compact than the previous version of this. It's also 24% lighter, and you supposedly gets 100 plus cuts more per charge on a battery because this brushless 1+ HP is the way to go. Now, this does have toolless blade changes. You just flip the little switch there, it throws the blade out, and then of course to put it back on, you just simply snap it back in place. It does have a lock button to prevent you from pulling the trigger when you don't want to, but if you're changing the blade, you just go ahead and take that battery out anyway. But lock, the trigger won't move. Unlock, it will. Now, this is variable speed, but it's controlled by the trigger and not by a dial or any push button like that. I know a lot of people appreciate that we can adjust the speed based on literally how much pressure you're putting on the trigger. Now, if you don't know what these are for, they're basically rough cut type things or more aggressive cutting, like for metal, pipes, things like that. Or if you're breaking down pallets, things like that. Maybe you're using pallet wood for your projects. This is a great way to break those down without having to pry all the nails off and all that stuff. I wanted to test real world performance differences in these 3 batteries from RYOBI. We have the regular, we have the lithium high performance, and then we have the high performance edge, which is the new one. I want to see how much difference there is when we cut a 2x12. Now, I've got a 10-pound weight here. It's just a rogue 10-pound weight. I'm going to hang this off of the tool so that it pulls the pressure down and I don't introduce any extra pressure there to change the results. But let's take this outside and see how it performs using the different batteries. And editor Chris, say hi. One of the best editors in the business. He's going to pop up a timer here and let us know how each one performed. First, on the regular old 18-volt lithium battery, it's a 4 amp hour battery. I mean, the thing cut pretty good, but it was also a little sluggish in my opinion. But it did go all the way through there, but we are using a very fresh blade here, so we'll keep that in mind as well. Next, I went ahead and put on the high performance battery, not the Edge, but the older high performance battery. And we can see the time difference here versus the first. And then finally, I wanted to throw on this Edge battery. In my previous video with the Edge battery, I showed the difference in even the sound of the drill when you put the regular battery in versus the Edge battery. Now, using the Edge battery to cut this 2x12, it felt faster. We're gonna pop the times up here to see if it was actually faster or if it was a placebo effect. But even so, the tools do run more efficient with these batteries just because of the way they're delivering that power. You're getting better battery life, more power, and longer battery life, the lifetime of the battery overall. And then we went to the M18, and by the time I got there, the blade was kind of dull right there next to the tool, so it kind of throws off the test a little bit, but the M18 performed fairly well, in my opinion, with a dull blade. Next thing I want to do is cut metal. Now, this is just a standard 3/4 inch pipe like you would use with pipe clamps. And so let's pretend you bought this pipe and now you're going to cut it in half or cut it into certain sections so that you can have certain lengths of pipe for your pipe clamps. That's kind of the idea here. Same 10-pound weight. We're going to start out with the regular 18-volt lithium, 4-amp-hour battery, cut pretty good through the pipe. When we put on the high-performance Edge battery, I felt like it cut quite a bit quicker. We're going to find out. I don't know if it was just a second or two, but it did feel like it was faster. We'll find out here. Chris, tell us how fast it was. And then I used the M18 saw just because we've got it and we want to see how fast it can cut through the pipe. And it was, again, with a duller blade because we had already cut a couple times. The number 3 tool, if you're keeping track, the battery was 1, recip saw 2. This is 3. This is their new cordless, brushless sander. And this one shocked me. But it's not the crowning achievement for the year, I don't think. The next one is. This thing is pretty cool for what you're getting. Now, I was absolutely not a fan of their previous cordless sander. I bought it in a combo kit, and it wasn't brushless. It was fairly vibrating and very, very weak. In other words, the pad was stopped spinning with minimal pressure. I didn't like it at all. This one is vastly different. We're talking night and day. First off, you get the brushless motor upgrade with this new sander, which means you're getting better battery life and more power, and it's absolutely evident when you're sanding with this that it's doing its job. Now, it's not a Festool Rotex level sander where you're just eating off material, but this is a good finished sander for what you're doing with it. Now, I was very, very surprised at how well this performed. They even caught me on video how surprised I was. This is actually very surprising. This sander, I didn't expect much out of it, but it has very little vibration at all, even at the highest setting. And there are 3 speed settings on here. I wasn't actually planning on filming this part, but it's too shocking not to. Check this out. So smooth. I can't believe this, how smooth this is. We're talking, don't hate me here, Festool level non-vibration. And I have used a bunch of sanders over the years, and it's got a little vibration, but it's not much. Crazy. Vibration here is absolutely minimal. I'm not saying this doesn't vibrate. I'm saying that compared to the old version, it is absolutely noticeable, significantly noticeable. The box says 30% less vibration versus the previous one, and I believe it. Another cool thing I like about this sander, or a couple, is the way they've decided to change the orientation of how you insert the battery. The other one was opposite direction, and I think just changing this, it changed up the balance of this sander so that it's much more balanced feeling. Even with a big 4-amp-hour battery on the back, it doesn't feel overly heavy towards the back. It is a little weightier toward the back, but not bad. And as you can see, it sets flat. Now, this is a variable speed sander, so you do get those 3 different speed settings right on top, and how you adjust those is with the button on the right. Power it on with the button on the left there. And it says industry's first LED light on a sander. I guess I've never noticed that. I've also never really needed a light on a sander, but it's there if you need it. On the variable speed, it goes from 7 to 11,000 RPMs, depending on how fast you want it to spin. It does come with a dust bag, and dust collection's fair. I mean, we're not talking Festool level, but we're also not spending Festool level money, right? But for what you've got here, I sanded some walnut, some pine, and it just did fine. Like, it was just good enough to get you by. Now, should you want to hook a dust collector up to it, my Festool fits right there, which is awesome. And from previous knowledge and experience on the Hercules dust extractor, it will also connect there too with one of their adapters. So you're golden there if you wanted to hook up dust collection. But the little bag, if you're doing this portable or taking this around to job site or projects, then the little bag does a decent job as much as any bag on any sander does. Now, one thing I did notice on the sandpaper itself, this is hook and loop, so you can use whatever paper you really like. I do enjoy using 3M sandpaper, but it seemed to jump around a little bit more on this net style paper, but it may just be the way this is designed with these grooves and things. The actual RYOBI paper performed pretty well, real smooth at feeling. As far as when I'm sanding with it, it's not moving and jerking around and things like that. Just an observation there, but not a big deal either. Again, the main draw with this sander is the very minimal vibration and the power you're getting. As far as cordless sanders go, I haven't been a fan up until recently when I used the rigid, and now this one, pretty impressed. Now let's bring in the belle of the ball. Probably the best, in my opinion, RYOBI tool that has been released in the last few years, and I've reviewed a bunch of them. I think this barrel grip jigsaw is a must-have if you're in the RYOBI platform, or if you've been thinking about dipping your toes in the green Kool-Aid, today's the day. Get this thing. It's fantastic for several reasons. Let me show you. First and foremost, just cutting with it. It's awesome. I'm cutting all kinds of curves and different things. I didn't even mean, you're right, I didn't even mean to make this symbol, but I did, and it was easy. And you can see the cut quality is absolutely fantastic, but there's probably another reason why we'll talk about. But as far as vibration goes, very, very minimal vibration on this thing. I think on their website it says 40% less vibration than the previous model, and that's talking about the D-handle model. I wasn't a fan of the D-handle jigsaw. It works pretty good, but this is absolutely amazing. I am absolutely floored by the quality of the RYOBI tools recently, and especially this RYOBI jigsaw. People are gonna call me a fanboy, they're gonna call me a shill, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. This is really nice. And if I see a nice tool, I tell you it's a nice tool. Enough, let's talk about the features of this thing and what you're getting. This is a variable speed jigsaw, and much like the rigid, this does also have the automatic mode, and I really, really enjoy having the automatic mode on there. When you put it on A, it basically starts out a little softer, and then as it needs more power, it ramps it up. But I did notice it doesn't go all the way full power. I don't think the rigid did either, but it does ramp up when power is needed. If you're turning curves, if you're cutting a little faster, it'll give you more power. But you could also dial it all the way from 1 to 6. It also comes with this non-marring shoe on the bottom that you can remove if you so chose. There's also a blower function here that you can turn off and on to blow the sawdust out of the way. There are 4 settings to adjust the oscillation of this jigsaw, and what you'll notice here in the video is when you have it all the way back, the cuts are absolutely smooth. No tear out or anything like that. The further you go up toward the number 4, or number 3, actually 0 to 3. Why don't we do 1 to 4 instead of 0 to 3? Come on. Anyway, 0 to all the way to 3. When you get to 3, you're getting more tear out, but it's cutting more aggressively and faster. So if you just need to rip stuff in half, you don't care about the finish, then go 3. You can just rip it all the way to pieces, And then on the 0 setting, it puts a very smooth, very clean cut. And as you can see here, a perfectly clean cut all the way across, or as near perfect as you're going to get with a jigsaw, and just the finish of it's glass-like. It's just a really, really nice finish, but there may be a reason for that. If you look at a higher quality jigsaw blade, like these Festool, don't run off, just listen to me, hear me out. Use a Festool blade like these. I bought this pack a long time ago on Amazon. It makes a massive difference in your cut quality if you just get a good blade. So if you're using your jigsaw a lot and you want cleaner cuts, not wavy cuts, or the blade's not walking all over the place, check out a good quality blade like these. You'll see a massive difference. Speaking of blades, this does have a toolless blade change. I always like that on these jigsaws when you don't have to have any type of tool to change the blade. Literally just the flip switch, pops it out, pop it back in, and you're good to go. And let's not forget that this is a barrel grip, and I have become a huge fan of a barrel grip jigsaw since I got the rigid about a year or so ago. Just cutting curves and things like that is just a lot more comfortable. I much prefer these to the old D handle. I'm sure there's some reason why you could use a D handle versus this, maybe the compactness of it or something, but I would absolutely recommend getting a barrel grip if you have one available in your battery platform, or, you know, check out the RYOBI. One of the coolest things you can do with a jigsaw is cut random shapes. And one of the coolest woodworking projects that you can make that actually sells are charcuterie boards. They're also one of the easiest to make. I've got a video showing you exactly how to do this, cut random shapes out with a jigsaw, sand them, put some oil in it, bada bing, bada boom, you've got a project that you can sell or give as a gift. And the great news is I've partnered with Old Logging Sawmill right here in Arkansas to offer charcuterie board kits that you can purchase and get free shipping if you use the link in the description, pin comment to go check them out. These kits are walnut and other species, already dried, ready to use, and the pictures that you see are the actual kits you're gonna get. So you can select what wood selection you like and then go from there. Check them out, link in the description and the pin comment. Tell them Country Breakfast sent you. And of course, if you wanna put some Outlaws board butter on there to polish them off, that'd probably be good too. 731boards.com/store. This could be the single greatest tool invention of the last decade. This might just be what we've all been looking for, the Festool Domino Killer. Let's go. So this is from a company you may know, KREG, who makes pocket hole jigs and router tables and router lifts and track saws and a number of other awesome woodworking tools that we all know and love. Well, mostly love. This is a brand new invention and it's called the Mortise Mate. I think it can give some real competition to the Festool Domino with a few drawbacks. If you'd like to check this out or any other tools you see in this video, check the link in the description, the pinned comment, or the shop button right here on YouTube. Now, full disclosure, KREG did send me this for review, but that doesn't mean I don't have problems with it. So, there's that. All right, out of the box, what you get is first on top is the instructions. Hang on to those because we do need to read those apparently. They're just gonna tell you how to set this up, which is very easy. Literally what you get is the Mortise Mate itself and the mounting board or the work surface board, and then you get the screws and all to attach it to that board. It's really simple, it only takes a couple of minutes to put together. 4 screws will mount that board to the jig, and then you'll have to mount the handle. The only thing that was a little hard to get that plastic washer to seat onto that bolt because it wasn't sticking through as much as I would like to see here to lock it in. But once you get that figured out, you can tighten that down, then put the other 2 in, and that's going to attach that handle. And this handle is reversible, so if you are left-handed or you would prefer to move that with your right hand versus your left, you can do that here when you're mounting it on. It also comes with 4 screws and pre-drilled holes if you wanted to screw this down to a workbench, or you can clamp it down, which is what I'm gonna do. You also get a 6mm bit, so you can drill those 6mm mortises, or you can pick up the extra bits, which I would highly recommend because you're gonna get an 8 and a 10mm, and depending on what you're building is depending on what size you're gonna use. Of course, the thinner the stock, the thinner the mortise, and thicker the thicker, right? Then you can pick up the loose tenons from KREG. There actually looks like a very similar box to what their pocket screws come in. 25 will come in the 10mm size, 50 in the 8, and 75 in the 6. I'm not sure if they will have more in the future. I'm assuming they might. I would like to see them have bigger packs of these, but this is a good number to get started. I'd pick up a couple packs of each if you plan on doing some joinery. When you set the depth of your bit, they are indicated on there. What you want to do is make half of whatever the length of this tenon is. So for instance, the 6mm is 1.5 inches, you're going to set that at 3/4. Same thing for the 8mm, and then on the 10mm, it is 2 inches long, so you're going to set that at 1 inch. That way you get equal amounts of tenon inside that mortise on each side. The first thing I noticed out of the box is how well this is made. All aluminum construction minus a couple of small pieces like dust collection, the tension handle, and of course the plywood bed. Other than that, everything that moves is metal, which is great. And this drill guide here, what I like that they did is I don't have to switch this drill guide out because they could have done that and made different size bits and you had to switch out drill guides. It would cost more probably. But I am glad that all 3 sizes bits, 6, 8, and 10 all fit inside the same drill guide. The only difference is the size of the cutter head at the end. But everything else is metal. Now, one thing I did notice is after I started using it a while, I had to come back and tighten these 2 screws that operate the slide mechanism. I didn't tighten them down enough to begin with. If I would suggest anything, I would probably suggest putting a little Loctite on the end of those bolts before inserting them. That way everything stays nice and tight. On the right, the set screws are easily accessible. On the left, if you have this set up on the left orientation, it does get a little cumbersome to get in there to that one. Not bad, but it's there. And as far as the spring mechanism works, it plunges every time you move it left to right and you hit that depth stop, everything works well. And you can hear it audibly snap as it steps down that 1/8 inch or so. And then it stops snapping when you get to the end, or to the bottom. To adjust this up and down, this tension, you just loosen this. Then you can slide it up and down to fit the size material that you're going to be working with. All right, so the very first test cut went very well. It was super easy to use. You're literally just moving the arm back and forth, and every time you hit one side or the other, it steps down just a little bit. And that lets it cut that mortise just right. Now this one's a little loose, as you can see, but there's a lot of times you may want that if you're just using this for alignment or something like that, or you can make it tighter. And the way you make it tighter is with this adjustment screw on either side. You can back off this set screw and then adjust this in or out, so you can make the mortise more narrow or tighter, depending on what you want. Once you get it where you want it, you can just adjust that back down. As you can see, as you move this screw, it's moving this little pin in and out, and that's where the positive stop happens. To reset the depth, all you do is push that button on top and it'll pop back out. Now, one thing to note on this thing, it's going to take a little bit of time to dial this in on each side so that you get these mortises just right. Now, this one I was off just a little bit, and I think I know why. Because if you set one side longer than the other, it winds up throwing it off on one of the pieces and you wind up with a kind of an offset. But a lot of times what I do when I do domino joinery is I'll put one side tight, the other side loose, similar to what you see here. I can hammer this tenon in and it's pretty snug in there. And then the other tenon I cut loose so that when you put those together, you can position it exactly where you want it for the glue up. And then once it's glued, it's there. And we get a perfectly flush fit on top. And the faces align perfectly, so it's just a really nice fit. The reason these faces are going to align perfectly every time is because if you use the same top side or the bottom side on this, you're going to get that hole drilled at the exact same spot vertically. Layout on these will be key. You see I got a line drawn down the middle there, across the end grain there, and then you're going to line that up with that line that corresponds on this jig. You line that straight up, you clamp this down. One thing I did find very useful are these Bessie clamps that have maybe a longer reach in there. Now they're made for stuff like that where it reaches in there really so that I can get around there and clamp that piece on. Those work better than just these standard quick clamps. One quick way I've found to set this width on this tenon here is to just lay it on the jig itself and then move that from side to side. You can move those set screws in until you get it to your desired width. Now it could be a little tight, a little loose, however you like it, but you can adjust it easily like that versus trying to guess at it. Always cut a test piece just to make sure after you're done. I was a little bummed. I thought I broke a bit when I was trying to do this miter mortise and tenon, but what happened is it's actually relieving because I literally thought the bit had broke, but it actually just friction fits in there. And so I'm assuming if I stick it in there like that and then tamp it down, we should be back in business. It's kind of different design, but it will pop back in there and you can rock on about your way. Not what I was expecting. I thought they were cut into them, but apparently they just friction fit down in there. So fairly neat. In the kit, you do get the 6mm bit, which I do love because they do have that set collar on there. Very similar to their pocket hole jigs. If you've ever seen those, they have the window that lets you set the depth that you want to use. This is very similar to that. And the 6mm you can set 1/2 or 3/4 or anywhere between. And then as you step up to the 8 and 10mm, you can set up to 1 inch. And what that means, that's the depth you're going to drill your mortise. I would recommend, if you have the budget, to go ahead and get the 8 and the 10. Depending on what you're making, you may need those larger size tenons. I'm having trouble not saying dominoes because they're shaped very similar. I would pick them up just because it's great to have different sizes available depending on what you want. The thicker the material, the bigger the tenon you're going to want to use. Now how this works is it literally just steps down about 1/8 inch every time you go left to right. So once you hit that stop on the end, it releases a mechanism in there that lets you go a little deeper every time, and it looks like about 1/8 inch each pass. until you get to the bottom. You don't always feel when you're at the bottom. There's no indicator or anything like that that's going to let you know that. You just go by feel and sound, because you can hear a little bit of difference because it's not cutting wood anymore, and you can feel it on the drill slightly. It's a very slight difference. As far as the adjustment up and down, you can adjust on this from 1 3/4 inch all the way up to 1/2 inch, depending on the thickness. That's the thickness of the material you're going to be cutting. I also used it on 1 1/2 inch 2x6, and it worked great. You just drop it down to 1 1/2, lock it in place. There's a knob right here, like a 1/4 turn, and you're just locked in. And then if we want to go back to the 3/4, move it up there, 1/4 turn, you're locked in. For most cases, you don't have to be perfectly in the middle of this cut as far as vertically, because as long as you reference the same side on each piece, whenever you put it together, it's going to line up every time perfectly. And that's where this really shines. Now, to set up a real world scenario, I did mill down some maple so that we can show you how this works. This is 3/4 inch thick, and it's already planed and all that good stuff. All right, the first scenario is if you're making just a square butt joint like this, you want those to line up perfectly. And that's where the Festool Domino, it shines. Like, it's so great because it's very easy to drill those mortises and then pop that domino in and make everything slide together. This does a very similar thing. Now, what you're going to do is, after you got it all set up, you're going to set this bed height for the 3/4 inch thickness, and that is indicated on the face of this mortise mate. The next thing you're going to do is clamp it down. Now, it does have ways to screw this into a workbench. If you have the space or a dedicated area for that, go ahead and do that. It's probably going to be the best way to go, because I did notice that it keeps falling off the bench when I'm trying to clamp it down because of the weight of this aluminum versus the pad here, which is just plywood. Not a huge deal, just something to be aware of. Now, once you get everything clamped down, what you're going to want to do is lay out some lines where you're going to want to drill those mortises on your product. For instance, here we've got just a square end joint. I want to draw a line all the way across both pieces. That's going to make sure I know where we're going to line this up. Now, you're going to take this line and set it exactly on this line that's indicated, the vertical line here on the mortise mate. That's going to let you know you're going to drill right there. Now, I did run into an issue here, which we'll talk about in a minute. Once I had both of them drilled, I put these two pieces together and they didn't match. Why did they not match? Well, I drilled them both very tight. In other words, 2 tight mortises, and this needs to be set up exactly right for that. If you're going to do it that way, both of these set screws on either side have to be exactly in the center. Now, there's going to be a few ways you're going to try to do that. One, you can kind of eyeball it with tenons that you can buy, or you can build some type of jig to set this center up every single time. I don't know. This is one of the problems I have with this. We'll talk about it later. Not that it's a bad thing. Just talk about it later. Normally, when I make this type of joint, whether I'm making tables or end tables or stuff like that, what I want to do is make one of these mortises really tight so that I have to basically hammer in that tenon so that it's nice and snug. The other one I like to set up loose. This gives me a little bit of play up and down and lets me adjust that so I get these perfectly aligned. I like doing it this way. Some people want tight on both sides. You make your choice. It doesn't matter to me. And once you clamp everything down with glue, it's gonna be there. What's important to note, though, is it doesn't move up and down, only side to side. So whatever depth or height you set it at, rather, is where it's going to be on both pieces, and that matters because that's going to make sure both of your pieces, if they're both 3/4 of an inch, will align perfectly on both sides. This is where this thing really shines, much like the domino. It is an amazing, not only joinery tool, but it's going to make sure everything is nice and flush and just comes out perfect. What if you're making a tabletop, like a panel glue up? Now, I've done this with the domino on a big walnut panel and actually breadboard ends with a panel, and it worked beautifully. This works exactly the same way, but a little different. So how's it exact? Well, it works similar because of the way it's referencing this bed to set the height of that tenon. For instance, these 6 holes that I drilled in these 2 pieces, when you put them together, they slide together perfectly. Again, I like to leave one side tight, one side loose. That'll let me slip just a little bit side to side. The edge grain we would glue together in this panel so it would always be there. It's never coming apart. But these tenons are the exact same height or distance away from the top, so it's perfectly flat. And that's exactly what you want on a panel glue up. And that's where I think this tool, as well as the domino, always shines. When you're making panels like tabletops, desktops, even cutting boards to some degree, if you wanted to put dominoes in there for whatever reason, you can align those perfectly, less sanding, more strength in there. It just works. Another application is if you're doing 45-degree miters, or any miter really, and you say you're wanting to make a picture frame or something like that. Just cut two 45s, and then you're gonna draw a line on there across those two 45s so that you have a reference point for this to line up. You're gonna line that up again with that vertical line and then drill your mortises. Now this is where I thought I broke a bit, but I didn't, but I sure thought I did. I just switched to the 8mm bit and then drilled the mortise out, and it worked perfect. As you can see here, it lines up exactly perfectly. A little snug, which I don't terribly mind here, and both faces here are also perfectly flat. The angle is also perfectly aligned at the top and the bottom. It's just a good all-around fit. So if you're building picture frames or any square frame, really, this is where it's going to give a lot of strength in that miter. As far as dust collation goes, it works really good, much like the Domino. The Domino has 0 dust. This may have 1 or 2% dust. It works extremely well when you have it hooked up. The only thing is, like my Festool dust extractor won't hook up to this, a standard shop vac hose will fit right into that adapter, or over that adapter rather, with a slight little bit extra room there. So if you do have a regular shop vac, that'll work. If you do have a dust extractor, I got this Rockler dust hose kit that has a lot of different adapters, and it works perfect. Now before we get to a couple of things I don't care for about this new mortise bait, it's an amazing tool, but there's a couple of things I would improve if I could. We'll put it like that. Let's talk about the Festool Domino. This has been the king of joinery, fast joinery anyway, and one of the most controversial tools you could talk about because of the price. $1,200, and that doesn't even include the tenons. So we're talking 4 times the price of this mortise mate that you can do basically the same thing? Well, almost. There's a couple of things that this will allow you to do. First, you can take this easily to your work. So if I'm building a tabletop, I can take this wherever I need it to, especially on long, thick boards, right? Because if you're using this, you're gonna have to lay the big board on top of this and move it down. You'll have to shim it up on each side with some extra plywood. 3/4 inch plywood is what this is. So you lay the pieces out so everything stays nice and flat. It just introduces a little bit extra work. Not that that's bad, because you are saving 4 times the price, or at least 3 times the price, $900. Another thing where this shines is we can do angles with this. Because it has this fence that you can adjust to basically any angle between 90 and 0. So if you have 2 long 45-degree angles that you need to join together, this is where this is going to shine. And this doesn't have that option. You can't do angles on there, which I find odd, because this is kind of an upgrade or an iteration on Jessam's Pocket Mill Pro, and they have a way, if you buy the right stuff, to do angles. And I wonder if KREG won't come out with something like that in the future. There's also a bunch of accessories and things you can buy with the Domino, but that doesn't really matter here, because I think if you're looking at this, you're not necessarily wanting to buy a Domino because of a few reasons. Number 1, you don't like Festool. Number 2, it's too expensive for what you're doing to justify that cost, because it's not just $1,200, it's also another $300-ish for extra bits, size bits, as well as some tenons and things like that. That's why I think this could be a Festool killer for a lot of people, because it does accomplish very similar tasks to the Festool Domino. If you're comparing the same sizes, the Dominoes are slightly longer, just barely, and then the only other difference I can tell, other than the design of them or the markings on the top, is the edges on the Dominoes are a little bit pointy, almost like somebody pinched it to that edge, and the KREG tenons are rounded. Other than that, they'll fit in the same holes and work the same way. So if you have a Festool Domino and you want to save some money on tenons. Really my 2 main complaints, and they're very nitpicky complaints here. Not even, I mean, it's just something to be aware of. I wish that in some way, when we're adjusting the left to right, that we could adjust them both in at the exact same time, out at the same time, so that it remains at the exact center line of that marker there. Because if I adjust the right side all the way in, the left side all the way out, it skews that hole on the center line, right? And so if we could adjust both of those in and out at the same time, that would be amazing. I would love that. And then the second minor nitpick is this Allen wrench you have to keep up with to adjust those set screws, as well as the set screw on your drill bits. I wish there was a better way to keep up with this, because we all know this is gonna get lost and then we're gonna be searching for it. Not a huge deal, but I would like to see. All they would have to do literally is cut out something in this plywood where it would set inside there and embed a magnet underneath it or down inside there, and then it would literally just stick right there and we could keep up with it. Something simple like that would be great. And as stated earlier, one thing I would suggest you buy is a good clamp. I like this one only because it has a deeper reach and it works really well with this KREG, and this is the Bessie GK30. I'll link to it in the description. It's a gear clamp, and it clamps down really tight without damaging the wood, and it reaches in and grabs a hold of that, where the workpiece is over across onto this bed. It just works. It just works. That's what I'm saying. It works. Now there's one other Festool domino killer that I'll show you, but I probably shouldn't. I bought this myself and used it, and it scared me. Only because of how close your hand is to that spinning bit. And I bought this on eBay. I don't even know if it's still available, but if it is, I'll link it in the description. But it does a similar job to the domino, although different and more scarier. I don't even know the name of this thing. But you just use a standard router, so if you have a palm router or anything like that, it'll work with that. If you want a more motorized version, but I think this is a much better option than even that. Because of how this works, it's safer, in my opinion, and it just works well. I have no inside information on this, but I do foresee KREG coming out with maybe some attachments or things that can really level this up even more, like the angle attachment or something like that. I would love to see that from KREG. I think they did a fantastic job. This was the first one out of the gate, so I think this is a great addition to your shop. If you're looking to upgrade your joinery, this is the way to go, minus the domino. I think this is one of the best tools that's come out in recent memory because of what it does. It allows Festool domino-like joinery at an affordable price, because any jig in this that does this similar thing costs a lot of money. And this, I think, at this price, is a very good value if you do a lot of joinery, or you just want to step up your joinery from something other than pocket holes. This might be a great option for you. It's going to be a very clean look, very professional look, and I think it will last for years and years to come because it is really well made. You should check it out. Link in the description and the pinned comment, as well as the view products button here on YouTube. Go check this out, seriously. If you like these tools, you gotta check out that compilation video right there. More amazing tools that you don't wanna miss. Click in the box, get you the big old virtual fist bump.